Smarterz was saying, right? We could find that, the problem in 2018 was a voters' roll. So when the issue of biometric voters' roll came into the process, the issue was to make sure that we remove all duplicated IDs, we remove all those people who are old and fictitious voters. But this did not happen because our voters' roll was not auditable. I think you have heard a lot of people complaining about the voters' roll.
Right.
So this is where the problem is. But let me just leave it for others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, champion. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to create a new, lineup. Those, who have spoken, please, stay there. Stay there. I'll give you, I'll do, another, cycle so that, you can come through. Do not, go anywhere. I have got speakers that have requested, to come through. And, it's quite important that, we hear other views, as well. I want to create, this lineup, and apologies to those that I've added on first, earlier on, but I want to give preference, right now to Cooksman because his network is bad and, he's struggling. So I want to give him, the opportunity, to speak first. He's going to be followed by Zimbabwe. Njabulo, if you can allow me to let you, come, third. Tino, if you can allow me, to come in fourth, and then Steve K. So from Steve K, I'll then circle back. Mkoma Peter Mtisi, you've been there, being quiet. If you allow me to ask you to come after Mkoma Steve K, it would be very much appreciated, and then I'll go to Smarterz whilst I'm waiting for other speakers to come through. I want to urge also our sisters, if you can request the mic as well. We want to hear your voices. We want to hear your contribution towards this topic. It is important that we diversify this conversation along gender lines so that we get to hear discussions that are of depth and that are rich in terms of that diversification along gender lines. So Cooksman, take the mic, followed by Mkoma Zimbabwe, Njabulo, Tino, Steve K, and then I'll circle back to Mkoma Peter, Smarterz. Let us go with that order, please. Thank you very much for joining me. If you're joining me, welcome to the program. For the first time, if you're joining me for the first time, welcome to the program. Sorry. Let's go, Cooksman.
Thank you, Anko Ged. How are you? And everyone.
I am good.
Thanks very much.
You are loud and clear, so go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I've noticed really that some of the characters that we argue with here, they are they're not significant. When I noticed that, there was a time I was in a space general chat and I heard Rutendo Matinyar was fuming and he was angry that there are people in ZANU-PF, some officials who are benefiting nenyema sanctions. Deo pandakazoona kuti vamwe vanhu vatichita naro navo panapa ka zvimwe zvavanotaura zvinana nebasa rese hazvitombo make sense. You find out someone is coming here and saying hatina basa nemari ye-EU what but their leaders vano vachitoida mari iyoyo ine mazira andoita mari zvangu ka, because what I know, if we can say ZEC is ZANU-PF, this is 5 million guys. Musatamba ne 5 million ekuti vamwe vanhu vangoti hatina basa ne 5 million vanhu vezanu nemadira vanoita mari. These guys who come here on spaces here, they are not even known, these guys. This is why you see that in ZANU-PF, they are old madalas, spirit mediums are holding positions of power, while these ones are not Bashona Padar, they are useless, they are not even known, they are not recognized. But when they are speaking, they are just confirming the official position of ZANU-PF. Yet there's ZANU-PF.
Cooksman, can you push back? Can you easy on name dropping, because these guys are not here. And when they come, they come with thunder. They would want, to be. So please, just put your presentation. Don't name drop, please. Thank you.
Okay. All I was trying to say is, you see, let me give example of me. I'm just a Triple C supporter. it's fortunate that some of the things that zvatinozotaurawo isu zvinenge zvine kauchokwadi mukati, because zvinhu zvinorelata to all of us kana tichitaura nyaya dzecorruption nepa zvimwe zvinhu zvandogona kutotaura inini ka zvinhu zvekutoti ukazonotsvaka official position yana president Chamisa nevamwe vekupati ka vana vasingatombowirira nezvinhu ndinochitaura. So I'm just urging you guys kuti zviri nani sometimes musanyaya kuzotopinda nemwoyo muchiteerera zvotaura vanhu ava. Vanhu vanongototaura zvekuti vamwe vavo vanotsvaga kuda kutozikanwavo, plus munoziva zvekungotoshotesa zvokuti varutorwadziwa kuti havasi kupinzwa mugovernment yeZANU-PF. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much for that. Let me go to Mkoma Zimbabwe. Mkoma Zimbabwe, check the mic, please.
Hello, Uncle Gerrard. Murisei, how are you?
Andribo Mkoma. Zvirisei kwa muriko?
Ndiribo zvangu inini, ndiri paembassy. Ndachiita vigil protest saka ndapindawo mumashops epaembassy paya ndombozorora.
Embassy ibiyo Mkoma?
Only one embassy. London.
Okay, all right. All right, fine. Kwanga murisei kuembassy koko maita zvamafana kuite?
Ndaona door rakavhurika mudhara. Resecurity, retoenda downstairs. Resecurity. And ndaita video. Ndikatumira message kuti please chengetedzai security embassy. Kana paine vanoita nezvematongerwo emunyika vari pano ndikumbira kuti mutibatsirewo please, because pane vamwe vanhu vanenge vaine madocuments avo nezvimwewo zvinhu zviri very sensitive muembassy imomo. Musangosiye madhoo angobvurika fanike pamusuwo pechikwangwari chehuku. Ndikumbirawo ndapota zvangu. Says no freedom of expression. Ndingotaurawo zvangu inini semwana weZimbabwe, semwana wevhu. Handisitaurawo semwe uya anenge achiita zvinhu zviya zvemusikanzwa. Tichinge tichiitawo zvedu isusu ana civil disobedience, but tichinge tisingade kuiti chi kuti vanhu vazokanganisika zvinhu zvavo. Saka ndozvataona nhasi taitawo kavhigil kedu katinogara tichiita maWednesday mazhinji nhasi. Ende sezvo hatisida kuti tiite tichifugurana, ndosaka tisiri kutaura nechirungu, because izvi ndezvedu tese, embassy ndeyedu tese. That's the first part. The second part, Uncle Ged, you know what? Let me say this in English. There are some things in life which you will understand but when you now try and explain them to some people who need to understand them, you cannot force someone to understand something that they don't want to understand. You can try and explain till you have veins coming out of your neck. If you are white, you'll become blue. If you are black, you will stay the same color. Maybe your mouth can start foaming and your lips can become red and you can start sweating. But the matter of fact is, if someone doesn't want to understand something, you cannot make them understand. You can't. The significance of the European Union cutting funding to ZEC is huge. It is massive. The significance of the government of Zimbabwe even accepting the money in the first place. It leaves some of us saying, because they cannot even conduct elections using Zimbabwe's own money. They want to go to others outside and say, oh, tipe mari kuti tiite my elections. And then they're going to start saying, we're a sovereign nation, we're an independent country, don't tell us what to do. And they're going to start asking, who are you to be asking us to continue with democracy? Yet you're getting money from people to fund you so that you can have democracy in your own country. Like I said before, I cannot make everyone understand. I cannot force anyone to understand. It's their choice whether or not they'll understand. Just like the famous Ghanaian idiom says, when someone is sleeping, for real, you can wake them up. But those that pretend to sleep, you will never wake them up, no matter how much you try. I'll end there for now. Thank you very much, Mkoma Gerrard. Uncle Gerrard.
Right, thank you very much. I just seen your video. Ko mwada wanyatsotirakidza kauchipinda kamembers because ndaona dhoo rakavhurika zveshuwa.
Hey,
But
I mean, anyone can just go in there and do anything. And this is an embassy of a whole country, not even a security guard. No, please don't go in here. Or someone just to say, no, there's a warning. Not even a warning sign, no entry. Hapana.
right,
And they put a Twitter account. Twitter account.
mudhara wangu achembera kamudhara ari vaembers madhara
Twitter account. Twitter account kuti vataure vega. Mangwana is he going to come and achataura here? And I'm sure you can see kuti inini anditwita anotaura nechirungu because andisida kuvapuka.
Yes, no, yeah.
But vakasateerera
I'm going to put it. Yeah, I'm going to put it up there. I'm going to put it up there. But anyway, thank you very much. For that, Mkoma, I do appreciate. Right, let us move on to Mkoma and Njabulo. So just to reiterate, so it's going to be Njabulo, Mkoma Tino, Steve K, and we'll second. Oh, I'll give you the opportunity, to speak. Freelance, I want to acknowledge as well. And then, right. And Titus Mofu, I want to acknowledge you as well. Welcome into the spot. Right. So let us go, with that order. And then we'll see, where this, takes us. But if you're just joining us for the first time, thank you very much. You're welcome to the space. If you are joining us to understand what is going on right now, we're talking about, that, notice that we got from the EU that were saying that they are pulling out, their funding, the 5 million that they placed to support ZEC. So they've decided, to pull it out on the basis that they're questioning the, independence and the transparency of ZEC. And this is being informed by the reports that were presented by different observer missions that, brought into spotlight, these issues pertaining to how ZEC conducted and ran the election, in Zimbabwe. So we had, different folks, come through to, divergent views. On the one side, we had Mkoma ABM, who came through and said, Kutizo, we don't need, their money. They're just an angry bunch of people. They're angry because their boy, in reference to Nelson Chamisa, did not win, this election. So they're just, throwing, tantrums. And if you go around, to X, right now, you would see that whenever there is a discussion pertaining, to that, it is along, those lines that, this conversation is being shaped, around to say, these are just, people that are angry because they did not get what, they wanted. So they said, okay, forget it. Let us pull, our money, back. And there are some people that are even saying, which is, okay, fine, they put, their money. So don't even bother to bring them back in 28. That is, to say they are saying, whatever it is, that happens now. Everything is going to remain as it is, and when it comes, to 2028, don't bother about bringing the EU as an observer mission, into Zimbabwe. So, and then we have it, the opposite side, where the direction was to try and understand UNDP as the vehicle that was used to be channeling, this money. And Smarterz, came here and explained some of the issues that necessitated and resulted in the UNDP, Zimbabwe coming into, into the country, and saying that, these are the issues that, they are going to be helping in terms of, capacitating. It wasn't only issues to do with, governance or issues to do with, elections, but it was, a broader mission that they came on, and we are seeing like what ABM was saying, that there was money that was being channeled towards the health, stuff like that. Yes, these are partners that have come in, and UNDP is a partner that is coming in to help the government of Zimbabwe. But on the other hand, in that helping, they also ventured into issues of democratic governance, whereby they wanted to help us in terms of having an electoral body that is competent enough to be running our elections. But unfortunately, given what happened in 2023, the EU saw ZEC as not fit is, for the, not fit for that purpose, because they lacked transparency and they demonstrated that they are not independent. So let us continue, ladies and gentlemen, with the conversation. Come on, Njabulo, thank you very much for your understanding. Take the mic. You're going to be followed by Nkoma Tino, and then Steve K. You follow through my sister Cheshingo Madonna, but once I try to bring you back, freelance. You take the mic, and then I'll briefly bring in the speakers, that have spoken, before I engage other people that have been added on. Thank you very much, Mofu, for adding on, more folks onto the speaker, platform. But Nkoma Njabulo, your moment is now. Take the mic, please.
Sorry, Uncle Ged. Dora Varwa. They've closed the door now. I've just left the embassy. They've just closed the door.
Right, Njabulo, take the mic.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, guys, and good evening to everyone who is in this platform. It's just that the only challenge when I was listening to APM is that we tend to politicize non-political issues. From the inception of the when we had ZEC in I think when you look at the BVR system, from its inception, it was a system which was foreign funded. I think EU was one of the funders of the BVR system for us to get it and have it running. And you look at even the elections, the 2018 elections, we still ZEC was sponsored by also EU. And even this election that we are coming from, a majority of the funding came from EU. From 5-year period, even voters registration, EU chipped in money so that ZEC is able to facilitate and run a credible election. So these are some of the things we need to look at. We can't look at it today. We can't look at it yesterday because of events that came in. There is something that that disturbed me when APM was talking. He says no, because they are pulling out, because they are locals and Triple C lost and stuff like that, of which that's not true. Remember one thing that the current government from 2018 has said it is working towards. It is working towards what we call re-engagements. And a part of the re-engagements, some of you, mind you, that can still remember, was that the UK government and the European Union had said in order for Zimbabwe to be returned, they need to create a democratic space. Someone's mic is open there. We needed to create a very democratic space that is going to be able to accommodate everyone. But you see, and in order for them to help us to re-engage even with them, by helping us to create a democratic locus and space in Zimbabwe, it was EU's way of participating and helping Zimbabwe reach that goal. They had to sponsor ZEC. They were not sponsoring any political party or anyone else. They sponsored ZEC so that ZEC is capacitated to carry out its mandate at the end of the day. But it seemed like, what was said with the whole election that people didn't take cognizance of was that the European Union read out a statement, their report on that very same day. Their report was it sounded the same with the SADC report. And they were it had a very harsh tone on it and stuff like that. They were not happy with the way the elections were conducted, the European Union observers. So then you go back to look at some of these things to say they were not happy. Did ZEC ever try to write a response to the reports that were read by some of its funders to say this is the reason why? ZEC never responded to those reports, and it would have been unwise and very foolish for the European Union to continue to fund an organization that cannot come back and account for its mistakes. Because if ZEC failed, even up to today, ZEC has not even tried to write down any report to justify or to explain even to the Zimbabweans to say what went wrong. And if we, the taxpayers, we are supposed to even be up in arms against ZEC to say, ZEC, you ran a sham of an election. Up to today, ZEC has not given us any report whatsoever. And I think European Union has taken a good step to show their dissatisfaction on ZEC, because ZEC is taking people's money, is taking the taxpayers' monies, is taking donor fund, but it's still failing to deliver at the end of the day. Because if ZEC on its own is failing to meet the standards of its own laws, why should people continue to fund ZEC, or any sick or any sane person? Why should they continue to fund ZEC when ZEC is failing with all the resources given to it, internally and external resources that are being given to ZEC, and all the support which is coming to ZEC? So I think it is a wake-up call for ZEC to wake up and say, we need to change our ways. I will close by explaining something, Uncle Gerrard, which is very, very key and very fundamental. You see, one of the things that our fellow brother who was here from ZANU-PF, the mistake that he makes is when they want to politicize ZEC's funding because it's coming from EU. ZEC's funding, when it's coming from EU, Zimbabwe has always been a donor case. Most of our projects are donor funded. Most, even if they say the Beitbridge border, we didn't come up, that's not our project. It's a South African bank that sponsored that. The airport, it's Chinese. The Wange is Chinese. That road, Beitbridge, to going to, it's the South African banks. So Zimbabwe has never funded anything fully by itself. You can name any project which has been funded internal by Zimbabweans. Tell me just one major project. And so it goes on for ZEC. ZEC has always been funded by the European Union, and it has been funded by other countries in order for it to facilitate elections. We have never fully, even all our elections, I don't think we have ever fully ran our elections using 100% of our money. We have always been funded somewhere, somehow. We have always been funded by donors in order for us to facilitate our election. So it becomes naive of anyone in this platform to say, yeah, no, they were trying to do this, but all along they've been the one that made us to buy those BVR machines. Why didn't someone come up and say they bought those machines to try and put the opposition into power? I think it would be naive of us to think in that manner, because we have always been foreign funded for a very long time for our elections. Thank you so much, Uncle Gerrard. These are my thoughts on this subject that you have raised.
Right. Thank you very much. I want to quickly go to Mkomatino. Mkomatino, take the mic.
Thank you very much, Anko Ged, Citizen Manyama. How are you there? And everyone who is in this space. Thank you very much for this space. The main thing that I just wanted to state out, it was very unfortunate that ABM left already, because I just wanted to say, Anko Ged, he was actually reducing this topic that we are having a discussion to be just a beer or talk, whereby he was actually saying that this boy, and it looks like that was only his point, to only say that EU, they 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 take out this funding because this boy lost election. That was the only thing that he was just actually wanted to say. He didn't have any other points that he was actually highlighting to the audience. And it was also based on the fact that he didn't understand where was this funding come into play, where was it started, what was the circumstances with this funding started. I just want to thank my brother Smarterz for actually giving a background of how and when was this funding thing started. Like any other funding, right? When you are being given the fund, when you are, a donor is giving you something, right? It is, you are supposed to follow the framework or the process and the objectives which that funding is given. If you go out of the mandate, or if you go out from the specific objectives of the funding, therefore the donor has all the right to repudiate that funding, to take it back, or to stop it. It's well known, and it's general. I think any sane person knows that. And the other thing that I also wanted to highlight, Anko Ged, is it looks like the Warakashi, or those people in ZANU-PF, they want people to believe that it was the EU that forced Zimbabwe, that came to say, let us give you funding, because they had an motive to control our elections. That's not the case. The case, it was, this thing started in our parliament, right? And when we were doing the reforms, that's where the issue of funding started, like what my brother Smarterz articulated, to say, yes, that's where the challenge was being given. When the ZEC said, but we don't have funding to implement these reforms that you want us to implement on part of ZEC. That's why they said, okay, they give a proposal to the EU, and then the EU agreed with the proposal. Obviously, with any other proposals, they also highlighted to say, okay, on these things, maybe they corrected some of the things to say, go and make changes on these issues and these issues. I think for you to have a transparent system, to have a transparent elections, these are the things that you also need to look at, right? And they agreed to it, that they are going to do that. And we know very well when they did the coup in 2017, when they were saying Kutonga Kwaro, and when they were saying, when they were looking at a re-engagement and saying we are going to do these re-engagements, and that's the mantra that they were telling us, to say, yes, we are going to be friends with everyone and all those kind of things, right? And those issues were there, and they were committed to fulfill. They were saying they're committed to fulfill all these things, especially the ZEC, the transparent, and all the good governance systems. Those are the things that they were saying they are going to adhere to. It's only that when they see that they cannot manage to win the elections in a transparent way, they can no longer provide this auditable voters' roll, all these things that they were supposed to implement. That's where they now coming up and start to change it, and they are going back to what their mandate it was supposed to. And I want to agree with my brother Smarterz to say, it's no longer ZEC, it's not captured. They are actually being abducted. They don't have any power. For sure, they don't have any power. They're just being told what to do. That is exactly what is happening here, because there is no sane person that you agree something today and then tomorrow you wake up, you are not doing the same thing. And you did this today, and you say this is the process that you are going to follow, and it's known, and then tomorrow you say you are not going to do the same thing. You actually give recommendations on some of the things, and then tomorrow those recommendations that you give, you are actually send some other people to arrest the people who are doing the recommendations that you actually give. So it doesn't make sense. So that's why people are coming up with the assumption that they are actually abducted. These are the things that they are doing. It's not up to them. So I don't see anything out motive on the EU part. They actually did it to actually protect themselves, because their reputation, it was actually at stake by them continue to fund ZEC, where my good Dr. PT, who is down there, was saying the money was actually being used to buy those Halloween costumes that we see Chigumba was wearing. That is actually what EU was actually trying to refrain from that, to say we are not going to be associated with these shenanigans. I think the whole thing for withdrawal on their funding, they did it to protect their reputation. And it was a good move for me, Anko Ged. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. I'm just reading, something here that has been reported by right. It has been reported by Zim Live about 5 minutes ago, where they say Mnangagwa refused to sign PVO bill, sends it back, to Parliament. If you remember, this is the bill that was passed in the last, Parliament. And it's being said here that President Mnangagwa has declined to sign the bill, and has decided to send it back, to Parliament for reconsideration. I'm not sure, what's up with that, but it's something, that is being, reported. It was passed on the 1st of February, and people were expecting that it to be signed, into law before, the elections. But it seems as if that is now a new position has now been taken, and it is being reported. Veritas is saying that he is now, according to Parliament status of bills, send the bill back to Parliament with the reservations in terms of Section 1316 of the Constitution. We do not know the President's reasons for referring the bill back to Parliament, whether he considered it unconstitutional, because it certainly is, or whether he had other reservations about it. No doubt his reasons will be explained to the National Assembly, in due course. So that is a development, ladies and gentlemen. We all know, what happened with that, PVOB bill. It was considered to be, draconian, and it was considered to be a bill that was going to be stifling the activities of the NGOs, in Zimbabwe. So as it is being reported, that bill, Mnangagwa is not signed it into law, and instead is, referred it back to Parliament. So I'm quite sure we're going to hear more on that in due course. Right. So let us consider what we are talking about here, the EU, and its withdrawal of the funding that it was channeling through UNDP. It was, the money going to ZEC for its operational, for its, capacity building, processes. Right. So, Mkoma Steve K, how are you? Welcome to the space.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Uncle Jeda, for giving me this opportunity to share my little sense on this one. This is actually quite, for me anyway, looking from outside there, this is quite embarrassing, because nobody at all in their sense should defend ZEC at all. You can't defend what they've done. If I was a ZANU-PF, actually, I would crucify them at this point, because this was really, really so not professional. You cannot do something like this. Like, even the people who would donate to say, okay, we are going to give you money so that you can have at least a reasonable, a respectable process within your country, and giving people freedom and all that kind of stuff. And then you fail to this magnitude that even ZEC could not, even SADC could not cover this. You see, that's where you know that actually this is really, really bad. Even SADC cannot cover up what ZEC has done. And to see I don't know if they are ZANU-PF or they are what, to see other men coming into these channels and defend and call European boys on a kind of like a football pitch, and they've lost, and then they've taken their football home. It's quite actually. I don't even know that there are some ways to explain that. It's limited. That's what I would say. It's really, really limited. You are literally limited for you to not see that this is a disaster. And one of the things probably I would probably ask for those who are quite kind of like educated in these things, or who are learned or studied in this stuff. So how might we make ZEC independence, even when we can see right now that it seems like the president is the one who has to appoint or even approve the cleaner themselves within that institute. So how might we make them independent? We know it's possible because the president has to do what he has to do for the elections to happen, but how do we separate it to make sure that the president is actually doing the right thing, is putting the right people for the job, the people who are going to look after the needs of the Zimbabwean people, right? And so I think that could be my thing there. And the other thing going even down, we don't even know if ZEC is going to, because they are supposed to submit the report for the elections according to our kind of like a constitution here. They have to produce a report after each and every referendum or elections. Do we even have dates on that? If there are people who are in parliament right now, do we have anyone who knows if ZEC is going to do that or is dead now? That is it. All we do now is to throw some mud at each other to say, oh, this did not work, or ZEC did this, and then the ZANU-PF guys came in here and defend ZEC. And we haven't even had anyone from ZEC at all defending this car crash of a process, but all we hear is ZANU-PF. It's literally like watching your neighbor's wife losing her pants, and then me going and defend my neighbor's wife. Go like, no, but the husband is quiet over there. It's getting a little bit embarrassing. So if there is anyone at all who can answer those things, how do we make it independence if and when the president is the one who appoint and approve those guys into that post, and also if ZEC is going to submit the report for these elections? Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. I appreciate, your contribution. I hope, somebody can respond to what, you've said. I want to go to Freelance. Freelance, you've got your hand up. Take the mic, please, and then I'll yield back to Smarterz before I bring in the native into the conversation.
Uncle Ged, how are you? And Namanyama Magali, long time. It has been a long time, Bafana Banku. I hope you're good. There was a guy who announced the APM. Honest enough, thanks Smarterz for for what you have just said, because this guy, the way he's saying, it's like he's saying we don't care about sanctions. We've all said, Zimbabwe is crying that remove sanctions, but he says we don't care about that money. Honest enough, I don't want to dwell to what he was saying, but I use Zimbabwe to try by all means to correct what is wrong in the country. We cannot be an enemy of every country. We cannot be an enemy of our neighboring countries. We cannot be an enemy of these countries who are there to help us. So for him to come and say we don't care about this funding or whatever, I think, honest enough, sometimes and try by all means if something is not right, it's not right. Honest enough. Yes, some people might benefit. Who suffers is the class. Innocent people are suffering because of ignoring people like this guy. Honest enough, we need to talk as Zimbabweans and say, if something is not right, it's not right. There's a reason why that money is withdrawn. So let's correct all those things. I think That's my submission for the meantime, because the guy is gone. So taura map. But as Zimbabweans, whether uriwe ZANU-PF, whether uriwe UBD, whether uriwe what, it's high time to correct Bakashat, because we cannot keep on being ignorant. It's not right. If something is not right, it's not right, Uncle Chet. Tell people the truth that Murume uyarukutaza utaura, because I don't know. He's a clown. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it is always important, to understand that in every conversation, that we have, or in every time that, we get, to congregate, on a space, there's always, there's always a narrative, that gets pushed. Whilst, you others, you're trying, to establish, the facts, whilst you're trying to put a point, to put across, points that help in the understanding of a phenomenon, that would have happened. There's always a narrative, that gets pushed. So it is up to you guys, to understand whether this one here is a narrative designed, to push a certain type of propaganda, or it is a narrative, designed to try and bring in an understanding of these events as they are, unfolding. When I began, this space, the reason why I wanted us to talk about this was so that, we could have an understanding of what, this funding, was all about. So understanding what the funding is all about is designed to get us to the beginning, kumabambo, so that we understand training chakananga kupi. And when we get, that information, when we now get to the end point whereby we are having people, because, right now, the Japanese have put, their money. Maybe it won't be surprising to hear the Japanese saying, we're also pulling in our money. Then where does that then leave those that are pushing, the propaganda or the narrative that, it was the EU, that wanted, to put, their boy. Look at, Japan. Japan, put, money in there. If they do decide, to do, this, to do, the same, what is the narrative, going to be? You understand? So we really need to get to a point whereby we're talking about, these things. Yes, I do understand that, there are people, that might come in with a different, narrative or a different, point of view. But it is always important that, we get to capture what, people are trying, to be telling us and dismiss it, for what it is. If it is propaganda, it is propaganda. If it is somebody just coming in to support, their political party, fine and fair, it is something, that is welcome. I've got no problem, with that, because, even if you want to look at some of the greatest, things, that have happened, designed to be helping, people, you always got in the mix those that could not see that, this year was for their, benefit, because it is because they'll be coming from a certain system that would have conditioned them to see things in a way that is prescribed, to them. So, ladies and gentlemen, this right here, I know, you'll be all up and say, with Uncle, you're wasting my time, we are wasting, but, sometimes it is quite, important to get in understanding of what some folks, will be thinking. Because that right there will be an opportunity for us to set the record straight, or to bring out, the evidence, to push back against what these people, are talking about. Because having an echo chamber, ladies and gentlemen, it will not help us, because we'll come out of this here without an understanding, or without, all this, vast, knowledge. Tavakupi, where are we going in the Tiripapi? So I think, it is quite, important that, we engage in the conversations. Let us engage in these conversations, and let us accommodate everybody that wants to engage in this conversation. But let us also make sure, when we are doing the discussions, that we are having at this present, moment in time, it must not be pedestrian, and it must not be conversations that do not give us opportunities for us to have an in-depth discussion of the things, that, we are talking about. Understanding the role of the UNDP and why it came about Understanding what Smarterz was talking about in terms of how we try to revolutionize and change our electoral system in Zimbabwe. If you don't understand that, trust me, you're going to be one of those that just look at this and get fed propaganda and you run with it. That those are people that sometimes you really need to embrace, bring them here and say, look here, even though you were told this, but this right here is the reality. This is what is actually, this is what actually went down. So I understand this from this. Even if you want to continue, towing, that line that you were towing, it's fine. But let me tell you one thing here. This right here is what you ought to know. Smarterz, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Anko Ged. I'm here.
Right. Is there anything that you want to add or you want to respond to before I go to the native Mkoma Leonard and
Of course,
Mkoma Michael? Yes.
Yeah, just a small number, Ango, right? Small number to say, right? If you just do a simple Google search to say how much has the UNDP contributed to the Zimbabwean economy, you are going to get a figure of $1.64 billion. And this is how much they've contributed, or that's how much they had contributed by 2021 from 2016, right? So when you listen to ZANU-PF propaganda, you want to put all this into perspective. But ZANU-PF, they will come out and say, hey, we don't care about your $5 million. But I would like to agree with my brother Tino, Tino's submission. Thanks, Tino, for that submission, to say this is a strong message, and the EU is just out there to save their face and their reputation, right? And I'm reminded of there's a boy who used to play for Manchester United. His name is Mason Greenwood, right? Sometime in January last year, there were allegations, right? Allegations that included rape and a lot of things. And as a result of those allegations, organizations like Nike, Adidas, they came out and said, hey, we are not going to be sponsoring Mason Greenwood. And the question is, these organizations, they are saying, we don't want to be associated with this kind of behavior, right? So while these people may want to reduce it to just some soccer boots, but the issue or the message goes beyond the soccer boots. It goes beyond the 5 million, or it goes beyond the 47 million that Zimbabwe was getting from the European Union. And this issue was never about Nelson Chamisa. It was never about the opposition politics, but it had everything to do with our constitution, with the civic space, and it had everything to do with trying to break this cycle of disputed elections. Disputed elections, my brother. And if you look at our economy right now, we are in this economic quagmire because of the political challenges, the political instability in Zimbabwe. There was a person who came to a space yesterday, I got a submission, if you go to Harare today and you want to see the busiest office would be at Makombe building, right? And we are seeing, the young guys fresh from college, they cannot wait to leave Zimbabwe. So they are going to these offices to look for passports, and the next thing is they are out of Zimbabwe. So while this ZANU-PF look at this and say, you know what, this is just a political statement, they can keep their money. One thing that they should know is this statement coming through from the European Union, right? It damages, one, the reputation here, ZEC, but most importantly, it damages our reputation as a country, right? As we try to realize our developmental goals, yes, there's no way that we are going to achieve anything, under Mnangagwa. Ango, I heard what you said about the PVO bill, but the question that I would always want to ask is, this bill has been sitting in Mnangagwa's office since February, right? So 6 or 7 months down the line, that's when he decides to reject it and send it back to Parliament when it's very convenient to him, right? Because right now he's in New York City, he's about to give his presentation, right? And when he's making his recommendation, this presentation, Anko Ged, remember sometime last year or last year, but one, there was a recommendation that came from the UN with regards to the PVO bill, right? Recommendations that were made straight to the president's office, to Mnangagwa's office, to say, hey, president, if you are going to sign this bill into law, then we have problems. We do have problems because of how the PVO is going to infringe on our human rights, not just us, but also the private voluntary organizations themselves. So it's convenient for him right now, right? It's going to make so the breaking news is no. Mnangagwa has rejected. He sent the bill to Parliament, but when you look at the processes, Anko Ged, he is going to send it to Parliament just for optics. You will make his submission. He's not going to, he's not going to receive any criticism or to get some tough questions in New York because his response is going to be, hey, I had to send it back. And the problems, we don't have any explanations to say why did he send it back, in the first place. And our constitution, again, it has got some gaps in terms of what's going to happen after Mnangagwa sends it back. The parliament or the MPs, they are right according to the constitution. They are required to debate and make changes. For instance, right, make changes if there were any objections that came from Mnangagwa. So the parliament can make changes and send it back, and Mnangagwa will send it into law, or they can just send it back as long as they can have 2/3 majority. They can send it back to the president. Then the president can then refer it to a constitutional court which is captured. So ZANU PF, man, I look at Mnangagwa as a devil. I don't celebrate anything from the devil. And the same thing that I go with, I ask the devil, what time is it? And the devil tells me it's 12:33 p.m. I check my watch, it says 12:33, but I know that the devil is a liar. He has always been lying, and he's the deceiver of brother. I will never agree with the devil. So I'm not gonna celebrate this from Mnangagwa. I don't know what he wants to achieve, but whatever he wants to achieve, I know it's for his personal and selfish reasons. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. Right. The native. How are you, my brother? Welcome to the space. Take the mic. The topic is on the funding that has been withdrawn, or the notice that has been given by ZEC. I mean, by the EU to say that they're withdrawing the funding that they were channeling through UNDP, going towards ZEC, and ZEC, which it was using for its activities of bringing in some level of competence and or to capacitate ZEC for them to be in a position to produce credible elections in Zimbabwe. And that that decision is coming on the background or on the backdrop of what they say are damning observer mission reports that have questioned the independence and the transparency of the organization. Where do you stand on this, the native?
My brother Gerrard, as predictable as I can be, it's 100% justified. Let me start by agreeing with my brother Smarterz what he said earlier on. When we talk of this PVO bill getting rejected, I also share the view that it is a way of Mnangagwa sanitizing himself to appear as somebody who is upholding, democracy in the country. Because when you reject such a bill, when the whole world is expecting you to sign it, because mind you, these are the very same people that signed the patriotic bill. So that on its own, sorry, man, let me just take a minute.
Right. Sorry, Nkoma Leonard, if you can take the mic, please, whilst you're waiting for Nkoma Native to sort whatever it is that is happening on his end. Right. So take the mic, and you're going to be followed by Nkoma Carlos.
Hello, Uncle Jez. 1, 2,
I think-
3, testing. How do you read?
I think you need to celebrate President Nelson Chamisa as well. So the fact that he refused to go to the Constitutional Court and he decided to pursue, the diplomatic route, and we are starting to see, the fruits. So these are the fruits of the diplomatic initiatives that are coming from CCC. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. We appreciate that as well. We acknowledge that. And let us okay, I see the Native, your hand is up. I'm assuming that you are good and ready.
Yeah, so the thing is, Uncle Gerrard, watching how everything is going, Nangakwa is trying to sanitize himself as somebody who is willing to uphold a democratic, the democratic rights within the country. And it's not going to work. Him rejecting a bill is not going to work because it's not just about the PVO bill. There are long issues that need to be addressed, other than just the PVO bill which he just rejected. Then going to the issue on board, good people. As I always say, when we start saying that ZEC needs to correct its mistakes, I always feel like we are at some point sanitizing this whole thing, because a mistake, it's a different word on its own. That speaks to say things were done unintentionally. These things that we saw during the election, these were not mistakes. They were never a mistake. How do you explain that uh, a city like Harare does not have ballot boxes, ballot papers, whereas ZEC offices are in Harare? it's a it's a crazy theory to come and tell me that you have no ballot papers, but someone who is in Cholocho does have a ballot paper, but someone who is just right next to the offices of ZEC doesn't have those ballot papers. So if we approach it to say that these were mistakes, I strongly feel that we'll be sanitizing the deeds of ZEC. These things were done very much intentionally. They knew what they were doing. That is why, with everything else that has happened, ZEC has never came out to give us any explanation. Came to at least even Priscilla Chikumba. She couldn't even have the audacity to just apologize when she was giving the results. She came for only a 6 minutes announcement of the results, just like that, and she left. So it shows you how arrogant, even in their, shenanigans that they are doing, they are very much arrogant. This is to say, Saka uchaita say, uzaenzani. Nyanya kwenza phambi kwakho uzaenzani. This is to just rub it on our face that there's nothing that you're gonna do. And I am glad to even hear that the EU has withdrawn their 5 million funding. But the question is, are we gonna get an audit of how that 5 million was used? Because we want to know now that if EU sponsors ZEC with 5 million, we want to know what did that 5 million do for ZEC? In what way was it used? We want to know how that 5 million was used. And if there is any amount of money that is still remaining of that 5 million, we want it back. We're gonna give it for charity. ZEC does not deserve any penny from donors or funders, because how do you fund an organization that is already taking side with a political party? And there are issues of saying that so that ZEC can, issues of like saying ZEC can correct this mistake. We can never say ZEC will ever correct this mistake. The same ZEC of 2023 is the same ZEC of 2028. Because how do you explain, Uncle Gerrard, that a daughter of a vice president of the country works for the Electoral Commission. How do you explain that even the commissioner herself is compromised in as far as the interests are concerned because the husband belongs to ZANU-PF? The secretary of ZANU, the secretary general of ZANU-PF, Mpofu, his daughter is working for ZEC. So how do we explain that the daughters of or children of top individuals within ZANU-PF are working for ZEC? In a normal country, there is what they call vetting when it comes to issues like working for ZEC or state security, electoral commissions, state security, media, and so forth. They do a vetting to say, they look at your background. Where are you from? You know, who are you related to? And if I can tell you, most developed and well-progressive countries, children of politicians do not take these jobs in the question of matters of interest to say you cannot be the daughter of Barack Obama or daughter of Joe Biden and work for the Electoral Commission. That does not make sense at all. So in that regard, it tells you that there is more to ZEC than just these employees that I've just mentioned. We talk of the CIOs. You know, it shows you that ZEC on its own, you can never succeed a free and fair election with an organization like ZEC, you know. And in that regard, how does the European Union fund such an organization, you know? And speaking of these funds, and to say that most of the government projects are funded by donors, you know. And if donors are funding such amount of money and we are not seeing any way progress, now it brings me back to the land reform program to say, when there was the land reform program, we were told that the British stopped paying the government to fund the resettlement program. Now it starts to raise questions to say, why did the British stop? Was the money ever paid the British before 1999 fully used to fund the resettlement program? You will be surprised that millions and millions of pounds were even pocketed by ZANU-PF officials. Then they come around, they tell us that the British do no longer want with the money to fund the land reform program. Therefore, let's go and take the land from these white folks. Then they themselves are the same people who are going to get these farms, because when you have a clear track record of ZANU-PF mismanaging money like this, you start to doubt even the history that the land reform program ended up coming about in 2000 because the British were no longer, funding the resettlement program. So it's quite a lot in terms of how money is being handled. And one of the things I would say is they can say that we do not need this 5 million. You know, the thing about ZANU-PF, because ZEC is just the ZANU-PF Electoral Commission. It's no longer Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. The thing about ZANU-PF is that they walk around with this. It's this bully who walks around with a big chest, you know, that pretends like everything else is under control, knowing very well that they are under fire, if they're in shit, deep shit, you know, if I may put it that way. Because in as much as they can talk about how they do not need money from the donors, let's be honest, if donors are to, withhold back funds, you would see this government working not just, crippling, but you would see them in a wheelchair, this government, I'm telling you, because they cannot even stand on their own, except for the monies that they have looted, the gold mafia and so forth. This government cannot even stand on their own. So no matter, even if they say we do not need these funds, we do not even need the West, we do not need the whatsoever, the Chinese have been their friends. For Christ's sake, the Chinese trained Zanla and, forces. Why aren't the Chinese, funding ZEC then? Why aren't the Chinese being the ones, taking charge in terms of being the donors? You know, when you look at the donors that we have mostly in the country. They are the Europeans. In as much as we can talk of this patriotism, that at the end of the day, most of the money that we have in the country, it comes from the hands of Europeans. So it's that thing of saying that ZANU-PF can come with their propaganda and so forth, but we know that when European Union says they are withdrawing that 5 million, some of them are scratching their heads because that 5 million, they were even planning to even pocket it into their pockets. You'll be surprised if someone says that the outfits of Priscilla Chikumba, you ask yourself where the money is coming from. You'll be surprised that the part of the 5 million is also there, you know. So I'm in full support of EU ZEC, funding withdrawal. It's justified. I wish more organizations could take such a stance because we cannot keep on funding ZANU-PF elections.
Right. Thank you very much, Mkoma. Right. You know, from what I've gathered or from what I know, that money is money that was going to be spread over a period of time. I think it was from 2022 when it was signed to, I think it was around 2024, 2025, if I'm not mistaken. But so far, only 1 million had been used. So withdrawing, the facility, it means that they're withdrawing, the 4 million that is not yet, being used. So that is my understanding, of, that is, so, but anyway, thank you very much, for that. If you're just joining me, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming through. You can share, you can repost, this, space as well. Repost, this space so that, we can have as many people come through and participate in this, conversation. The conversation is all about what we had from, ZEC, from the EU when they said they are pulling, their funding. They're pulling their funding. They placed 5 million that was going to be going to ZEC via UNDP. And the thing is, that money, the reason why they did put that money was to so that they could. Let me play this.
The electoral process will be implemented by the government and UNDP and aims to contribute to the consolidation of democracy and peace, with particular emphasis on inclusion, particularly representation from women, youth, and persons with disabilities in the democratic processes. The support comes at an opportune time when government is prioritizing the strengthening of good governance in order to foster economic development. Globally, it has been acknowledged that building institutional capacities is critical for economic growth and development.
The second financing agreement concerns our support to the upcoming election in 2023. And looking to next year, I think we all agree that credible and peaceful elections will be a key element that will allow Zimbabwe to create a prosperous environment and to make the National Development Strategy 1 and Vision 2030 a reality. To contribute to that, and in line with the NDS 1 strategy of strengthening the capacity of independent commissions, the European Union is committing today 4.5 million euros to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to deliver on its mandate. And actually, when I presented my credentials to His Excellency President Mnangagwa back in October, and I asked him, how could the EU support elections next year? He suggested a support to Zimbabwe Electoral Commission.
Right. So the money was given to support ZEC in its quest to deliver a credible election in Zimbabwe. And we all know,
it's a good thing because
and
also
we all
have
know,
done it in the past.
we all had the observer missions, reports. The issue of credibility was at the center of most of those, reports. The SADC report, the AU report, the EU report, Qatar report, the issues of credibility were at the center of those preliminary, reports. So the money was given to ZEC so that they can fulfill on that mandate, providing an environment where the election was going to be deemed free, fair, credible, away from the organization being a tainted organization, a captured organization, an organization that is not, transparency. So these are the issues that we are speaking to, right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is what, we're talking about, and those are the reasons why this funding has been, taken away. Responses have been given. Folks have come here, they've given, their take on this topic. They've given the historical bit to the funding, and some have given sort of a current, bit on why they think, this funding should go, because it was a funding that came in with the strings attached. Do you agree with that? That is, what we are talking about. So we had Mkoma Carlos who's going to be coming through. My sister Mercy Wilkes, thank you very much for coming through as well. You are going to be the first female speaker on the platform today, which is a welcome development. You know how it is when I hear you, Mercy, on the platform. But anyway, we are also going to hear from Chagachaya. You are going to get the opportunity to speak, and then we're going to also hear from KK. I will follow you back. You've followed me, so I'll follow you back, and even Chagachaya, I followed you back. So we are going to hear from the speakers. So let us start with Mkoma Carlos. We'll go to Mercy Works, Chagachaya, and KK. Let us take that order. Welcome to the space, ladies and gentlemen. Take the mic, please, Carlos.
Danko, my bro.
What happened? What up?
What up, bro? That's life, man. The conversation is actually interesting, and we are learning a lot building from the responses from either sides. One of the things that I need answers from those who know is that the talk by the government occupied by ZANU-PF, or the ZANU-PF in occupation of government offices and whatever. We don't want this Western. We don't want this Western. How? To what extent don't you want this Western? Because you are lying that you don't want the Western. All along, the Western has been funding, and they didn't do it via back door. We are always told of what there is of an accusation that Triple C is funded by the West. You go to Zambia, you're told HLMI is a product, is a puppet of the West. But it remains a hearsay from them without, let me borrow the street legal term that I've heard from the street. I've never been a law student. They say there's no iota of evidence. They are talking from the street that. But now, there is an official funding done by these whites. I don't want to say Europe per se, but I want to say whites, as they say. They are funding our independent electoral body with knowing that there is English. English is a subject to me. My language is into. This one is in English. It says, don't hate the hand that feeds you. That's another statement. Another English statement will say, the one who pays the rent calls the shots. So, if those statements are true as they are, who then is calling the shots? To who? Because Chamisa is not in power, Monzora is not in power, Uza is not in power, neither Zapu is in power. So the only government that is occupied power is ZANU-PF. And I like that. I was also going to come with that video that you played, Uncle Jet, that white guy says, we asked Mnangagwa, what can we do? Mnangagwa said, please fund ZEC. So who is fooling who now? Hey, white. Who is a puppet? The one in power really to say, we don't want your money. Stay with your money. We want these things to be independent. We have people, they are going to vote for ZANU-PF. We don't want your money. But they are the ones that are saying, looking at election, the area that is lacking financially, please come forward and fund ZEC. So it is in such areas that I feel those that are in ZANU-PF, they are insulting the intelligence of Zimbabweans, really. That's why I said, okay, the other one that I need clarity on. Now that this thing has come as a response to the just ended elections, to say, no, we have been funding you guys, but you seem not to play the clear game, the fair game. You're not there. Therefore, we are going out. We are leaving you with your dirty things. Clean it yourself. Okay. Now, there is a story by Monzora that said we were given, I don't know whether he said billions or millions, one each, that was CCC, Mtisi, and ZANU-PF. We didn't know at the time. I think I don't know. It was me who didn't know. But there was something that I didn't understand. But I said, okay, anyway, this is ZANU-PF. They had a presser, Chinamasa, saying, we are seeing the West are saying they have money that they are giving to opposition parties. They want to fund the opposition parties. There is a bill. Our laws don't allow that. Oh, okay. And we thought at the time, okay, they are propaganda. I now understand. It was propaganda, I agree. But the idea of propaganda was saying, was trying to brainwash the majority of us to say Zimbabwe is distancing itself from anything to do with the whites and the West and whatever they call it. And I'm asking myself, that legislation is only limited to political parties only in 2023, because I guess somebody will help us here. There was a talk also that said the 2018 also, the political parties were funded. They had some money coming from these Western people going to political parties, including ZANU-PF itself. That's why Monzora then comes and says, we were all of us given money, but ZANU-PF used its power in government and they said, no, we have decided otherwise. No. Take back the money. Now, if we happen to have the proof that they did that other than taking it only from Monzora, then they were not honest, as always is the character of ZANU-PF, that there is legislation. When was the legislation brought into existence? It is not a yesterday thing. So when they agreed initially, they knew. So there must be something that they then realized later. If these people are given money, this is how much they will go. So I feel insulted really by such debates from ZANU-PF guys. Maybe the last one, that guy who spoke, and I believe he left. Let me just say this, in case we happen to have him some other time, maybe we can share the same approach. That guy says they took only 5 billion or 5 million, whatever the figure is. And he speaks of about 42 or whatever that is still coming from Europe. How, my man? You are saying these guys are throwing tantrums, we don't care about their money, but you pride yourself on them again, continuing to give much. Who are you fooling? I think as much as they think they're the ones with the degrees, some of us also have the natural degrees of understanding things. So I'm one of those that say, when we talk about these things, I talk about them, or I understand them from what they are, not what the ZANU-PF want it to be. And the unfortunate thing is, I think the ZANU-PF people still live in the Stone Age, where they think technology has gone ahead of ZANU-PF's thinking. Because had it been then, it is the year 2000s and 2008, this technology was not there. So even if they were lying to us using their broadcasting machines, the ZANU-PF broadcasting, somehow it was difficult to argue with facts. But now the technology, we are having our gadgets on our hands. Now I'm speaking to Uncle Ged. I'm sleeping in my mukuku in South Africa. But I'm speaking to somebody very far. Sharing such information is now easy. So who exactly are you lying to when we have ample evidence before our eyes to read for ourselves? Like now, if anyone from ZANU, we are not stupid people. Like now, there are people also who are not ZANU-PF who are trying to say Mnangagwa has addressed the GNU, whatever, the United Nations General Assembly thing. The truth of the matter, he hasn't. He will address it on Thursday. So even if anybody lies, whether from whatever side of politics and whatever, we are able to tell we are not stupid. So, Uncle Ged, I just wanted to echo that I know there is an insult to a natural intelligence of the Zimbabwean by these ZANU-PF people. I think
Right. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate. Mofu, tell us, Mudibwera.
Anko Ged, ndibasireoka ndikumkumbira
Munobatirwa nemko.
kuti ndipinde ndoda kuzokera mubasa. I just want to say very few things. Ndipinde before
Well, my sister Masi, I asked you to come in next. Can I put you on hold, for a few minutes? Thank you very much for that. Right. Mukoma, itai faster actually. Then I'll go to Masi. Tell us more from Right. Okay, Mukoma,
okay, thank you very much, Uncle Ged. Thank you, Tete Masi. Wanotaura zvinobvisa mvura mese ndokukwazisai vakomana nevasikana. Smarterz, you are great. Your presentation ndaiteerera asina ndiri mubasa vatenge ichinwisa mvura zvekare. That wow, this is good. Handisi kuda kunyanya kutaura nezve withdrawal yemafunding. Yes, inge rigaraziwa. That's the thing which was going to happen. But yeah, because vanhu vangu vachidhira nawo matsotsi. Right. Chandinoda kungoyeuchidza hama dzangu dziri paplatform panapa ndichekudai so. This guy anotwashamisa noti kumuda face yake but brain yake ndiye munhu nationalist akwanisa kubvisa mabhurugwa ZANU-PF, kufumura ZANU-PF the last extent zvekupedzisira kuti hazvigadzirikeba. I think it has been long patinenge tichitaura kuti maelection tiri kubirwa ZEC iri kuzodai and so forth. Dai ari mumwe munhu akatoti handitomboparticipate pamaelection but akati I'm going to participate, achiedza kuda kuti afumure ZEC sekuita kwainge ichiita kana kuroorana kwayakaita neZANU. Now chakaita ndichi kudai so iyi information yangu yandakungopakurirawo kune vanhu zvese zvenge zvichitsika towards elections or 2 years before elections. You are sending a video, you are sending information to Africa, to United Nations, to AU. It is a record for 2030. Zvenge zvizongori kupedzisira chete. Yinyo kuti maelection ayana taizviona kuti maelection arikutobirwa taizviona. So ndozvinhu zvaakagona izvozvo zvazoitwa kuti musi 23 August tiite maelection kwenge wakungopedzisa basa. Vanhu vonge vane data rese, the whole world ringe ane data rese kuti ndo zviri kuitika. Makambozviona kupi kuti ZEC inenzi independent, makazara vana vavo, makambozviona kupi mune CIO, mune chii and so forth. Hakuna zvakadaro. So ndiri kuti vakomana, this guy makanzwa kuti haana structures, haana constitution, haana zvipi and so forth. zvakaita zvakanaka wokutenga nemabhiriyoni wayo wanotenga wayo zvamakagwa kuti tina 250 million yemaelections yekutenga machicken ini and so forth. Wakashaya kutenga the parties be run 1 of 3 wangu wakatokwana iwo ndo zvakataurirana muCCC zvikafamba zvakanaka kuti wakashaya kutenga. That's why waisumudza nyaya yemastructures kuti aikwatisa mastructures wakati tinadiko akazotaurawo pamusami parari ndaenda kunovhota kumusha ndikati president hatisi kuda mastructures. That's the only way ndandakataurira hatisi kuda mastructures. Tatopedza zvinhu rari yepamusami kana hatisi kuda mastructures whether we win or not tozozviona kumberi uko tozoitwa wanoda mastructures ngaone une maparties nemastructures. Thank you very much comrade maita basa nokuti panguva I had nothing much to say about it ngoti ndingopo information ndingopo kungosimbisa vanhu vanonzi hamuna mastructures hamuna chii zvakatokwana zvatinazvo izvozvo. We are satisfied about it, which is good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dara Chakachaya. Thank you for that. Mercy, I think you were coming next.
Thanks, Mkomataitas. Anko Ged, Dave, Smarterz. I won't go through all of you guys. Makawan, this is, but Moroi. I had a question, but part of it has been answered. So we have this EU funding withdrawal to ZEC. Did we have EU funding to the political parties funding? That one, they split proportional. That was withdrawn by the government, saying that it is against our political funding rules according to the Electoral Act. Is that true? It was said by Monzora's spokesperson that the parties did not receive these party funding from EU based on it being withdrawn by government. Smarterz?
So sorry, Maz. Sorry, what was the question? Sorry.
Was there? I think there was a space that had Monzora spokesperson who said the political party funding by EU was withdrawn by the government, citing the Electoral Act, and say it is contrary.
Yes.
So now
Yes,
we
that's
then
true, yes.
see the EU withdrawing funding to the Election Commission. Don't we think that those two are related? That if we...
I don't know, Sis Mercy, if I'm interjecting from your question. Can I answer something?
Yeah.
Give me permission if you can.
Go on.
All right. My understanding was, from what Monzora said, the EU wanted to fund the 3 political parties such that they can train their agents and do all the whatever activities towards. And the 3 agreed. Now, later, ZANU-PF realized something that possibly this thing will not go their way. Then they went back and cited the law that this thing is illegal in Zimbabwe. This is where I was also saying I saw Chinamasa, then I realized later what was the game. That was exactly my question. Is this thing not the same? That EU wanted to fund the political parties and you want them to fund exactly that point. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So my thinking is this. If the EU's intention was also to fund the political parties, and they ended up just funding the electoral body that runs the election, is it not congruent that if they couldn't do the holistic funding approach, it is only right that they remove it totally? Now, this observer mission would have just justified their reason to remove it from another pot where it had gone. They were going to remove it anyway, because now its intention would never be achieved. If you could only fund ZEC, but not fund the participants. Now, we can also say, if ZANU-PF apparently they funded them in 2018, but they couldn't fund them now. All right. Someone was sending me an inbox. Now, to me, it makes no sense for us now, or the people who are opposition, to be saying, yeah, we promote that they must withdraw it. No, you don't have to say anything. Your input is not necessary for the EU to make its decision. It had already made its decision without pushing it to do so. Why I say that? It becomes ZANU-PF's bread and butter in the next election to accuse you of calling for something that in its doing you didn't have any say. Same as they do with sanctions. America wants to put sanctions. You, after the effect of what they've done, you endorse it. Now the accusation is that you called for. As Zimbabweans, we need to learn to let ZANU-PF hang itself, not give it narratives to use later. Now, with the funding that they got this time from the EU, ZEC was unable to even deliver ballot papers. It had been funded on top of other funding that it receives. It failed to deliver on a simple logistical matter, to deliver the paraphernalia that will facilitate an election. They did that with funding given to them. The EU makes its independent decision based on its own observations, not your petition, not your call out, and withdraws the fund. What are you borrowing its endorsement for? You're only doing that so that you, in the end, you will be fighting a narrative in the next election when ZEC fails to deliver. And the accusation would be, you called for the withdrawal of funds. It will be forgotten what actually caused the withdrawal of the funding. It was ZEC not being able to fulfill its mandate from its benefactor. It funded a service that ZEC could not deliver. Not you. And I say this to say that ZANU-PF has always been very good at diverting who was the cause of the Zimbabwean people's sabotage in their democracy. ZANU-PF's actions caused sanctions to be put in Zimbabwe. Whoever can endorse after the effect is not the cause of sanction. Their actions, their failure to risk assess, their constant obsession with putting our country's national security at risk is what calls these people, these things to happen to Zimbabwe. Right now, their trigger happiness and their inability to control mouth and its own people are creating a security risk and a relationship risk with our SADC neighbor. But now when we borrow our words to what ZANU-PF is doing, and relations sour, ZANU-PF has a knack of changing who the cause of a rift is, and then saying whatever consequences befall the Zimbabwean people are as a result of what you called, not who caused. We don't have to be excitable about the withdrawal of funding. We don't have to. In fact, now from the same audio we hear, you didn't ask for the funding. It was ZANU-PF who had asked for the funding, who had directed the EU to where funding should have gone. At no point did you have power to direct where it goes. So let's just learn sometimes. Let ZANU-PF hang on its own. Do not endorse. Do not be excitable about what is happening. Let the truth stand out so that in the future, people are able to see who was the cause of this, who is the puppet in this. Because if you jump up and down, as if now you have power to influence, then when another decision is made by EU, you would be accused of being the one that influenced it. ZEC's failure influenced EU to withdraw funds. ZANU-PF's inability to allow ZEC to act independently caused the EU to withdraw funds. That's what I wanted to say. We are very quick to get excitable and start speaking to organizations that have already made their decisions as if we are endorsing partners. They make these decisions independent to our endorsement or not, or lack thereof. Let's watch and see how ZANU-PF untangles itself from this mess that they have caused. And it is, to me, it makes sense. If the EU cannot find political parties who will be players, it just makes sense to not fund the body that will regulate the competition. There's nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the government yakawora. Let it stand out and fight its battles. Stop being an endorser of things you don't control.
Interesting input from Masi as always there. Masi, I think I might not have been online. Is there, just a general question, is there an endorsement coming from the opposition about this pulling out of, is there like an official endorsement coming from the opposition about this pulling out of EU? Are they celebrating?
Yeah,
Are they like
there is quite a lot of
position or
there is quite a lot of excitement that finally they pulled out the money. ZANU-PF chamama, ZEC chamama. Now the inference is that you are happy. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm saying it shouldn't become the narrative. What must stand out is the cause of why EU has withdrawn. That is what we must speak to, not our feelings about EU pulling out. Our feelings are neither here nor there. The reasons are what must be pronounced.
Right. No, I hear you. So these are the feelings of generic opposition people that you're referring to. Okay, Masi, I hear your point there. I'm sure you get some people to respond and say what they have to say. I think KK, you were coming next.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion we're having. It's always difficult to speak after my sister Masi has spoken. But anyway, I kind of have slightly different approach to the issue. I think the pertinent questions pertaining the issue are not being asked. Whether there is, or I think in banking we used to call it a term sheet, but this is a donation that was coming to ZEC. So I suppose what one would be interested to know whether there was an agreement with their performance issues that were attached to this donation. Because the trouble of it is, yes, I do appreciate the way performance issues around our elections. And I suppose perhaps a full study of that would have to be carried out, preferably by government and even also independent institutions. There were observations that were made, which I think everybody has been speaking to, and they also play their role. But I think a complete submission would at some point need to be made to Parliament, and also we need to have a proper independent study of intervening if they were such. But as far as the donation is concerned, one would really be interested to know what agreements were signed and what were the issues because obviously they can also take the EU to court if they feel that certain aspects of this agreement were not being abided by. So my take is that we need that full picture. If there is something that is attached to a donation of a chapter 12, that is especially going to a chapter 12 institution, which at the center, at the core of a chapter 12 institution is independence. And if here we take a chapter 12 institution, then we take funding, going to it, then there is an expectation out of the funding that then becomes a gray area for me, because if the very core of a chapter 12 institution is that it should be independent, and we know how money can
that flocks together.
Come again.
Oh, sorry. Oh, my mic is on. I'm just reading something here that I don't understand from Opel, you know. Sorry. Sorry, man.
So, okay, thank you. So if there is an expectation out of funding going to a chapter 12 institution, I would be very much worried. I think those are the issues that we need to speak to in analyzing this thing, because this thing we continuously mention of how ZEC is not abiding by its constitutional mandate, or whether it's exuding it's seen to be independent the way that it should be, should come from every angle. I mean, because we should protect it from every angle, the same way that I feel people want to protect it from ZANU-PF or the ruling party or the ruling party or anybody. We should protect it from funding as well that may be seen or that may be put out to elicit or to affect the way that it operates in any way, or whether there's a special there's an outcome that is expected out of such a funding. I'm going to just rest there.
Yeah, thanks, KK. Mercy, you've got to end up for a rebuttal or something.
No, it's a question more than a rebut. I can't rebut, I don't know the facts. But I was saying, Kuti, if the EU was recommended by the president, they asked the president where they could field their funding. He recommended funding to go to ZEC. Zimbabwe often boasts that they do not receive state-to-state funding. So the EU was not funding the government of Zimbabwe, but it was funding an organization in Zimbabwe, which is an independent. The recommendation was by the president. Now, how do you take your donor to court based on a pledge to help you? And that pledge is removed, and reasons given to you why they cannot, after the same donor, the benefactor, has engaged with you in an observation mission that produced an outcome whose decision it bases to withdraw the funds. Remember, the funds were given for a purpose. The intention was the EU's. The ones who would then achieve those intentions was ZEC. Now the EU has gone and observed and says, from our mission, which was to promote, help you facilitate through funding your ability to deliver on these intentions. We feel you were unable to do so. Therefore, we cannot fund. You are unable to deliver. How do you then take them to court if the suggestion is this pulling out, should it be contractual? Can it go to court? My question is, it will go to court as what? I intend for my benefactor to continue to fund me. When the benefactor says you are unable to deliver on my intention, which was my intention when I donated, what's the suing? How would we sue that?
So basically, when you make a pledge, you create certain expectations, right? So on that basis, people go on to make plans, especially if it's a credible institution that you understand are capable of making such a donation. So there's a whole process that follows that whole thing, that perhaps you would have jeopardized by then unfairly. That's why I'm saying I don't know the terms of this pledge, right? So one would be interested if we're there to solicit a certain outcome within ZEC. One, if that is the case, then that will impair the operations of ZEC, which goes against the creation of the Chapter 12 institutions that I'm talking about. And every Zimbabwean should be worried equally in the same way that other people are worried. I think, you see, the notion of people being, let me finish. The notion of people being worried on a political level is what is actually worrying to me, because Chapter 12 institution affects everybody. So the same way you will be worried that ZEC is captured by a certain political party is the same way we should be speaking to funds that go into this organization that are meant to solicit a certain outcome. That's number one. But if expectations are created by credible organizations, again, I do not know the terms or the agreement issues going into this pledge. But if credible expectations are created, I think on that basis, you should be able to sue.
Right. Koma, let me weigh in before Masino comes in. Let me weigh in and say, Kuti. Ndataura neshona. Maybe example yangu inokwanisa kunzwisisika. Because chirungu chinogona kuzotirasa chitime time. Imimi muri jaha. You know nothing about marriage. Kuti inofamba sei. Mova manzi izvo imimi mukoma imimi since maroora imimi. Takuya isusu sana tete. Nanasekuru. Tikubatsire mumarriage yenyu. We expect you kuti kukubatsire kwatiri kuita tikukupai mapillars ekuti mukwanise kufunga muri independent, mukwanise kuvaka imba yenyu muri independent. Pasina chimwe chinhu chinokwanisa kukuswayai imimi kuti mutore imwe decision. And then we find out later on kuti isusu taisa ma-resources ekuti tikubatsirei along those lines. Mazosvika imimi pakuti ma-decisions amakuzoisa muri marriage imomo, they are being swayed by vamwe vanhu, opinions vamwe vanhu, kana kuti you are being ordered by other people to behave in a certain way. Handiti ndo inini maonere andiri kuzviita, but nyaya iripo panapa ndeyekudai so. Chinhu ichi tikada kuchitora pedestrian in a way yatiri kuchitora, sometimes ndenge tinorasika without kuti tinyatsonzwisisa kuti chinhu ichi chakanyatsobva kupi and why chinhu ichi chatisvitsa ndenge patiri panapa. Ndofunga handizomanga muripo here panga pari kutaurwa namukoma Smarterz vachiedza kupa nhoroondo yekwakabva chinhu ichi kuti izochinge chichinzi chinhu chiri kusapotwa kana chinhu chiri kupiwa mari the EU, or money is being given by the EU. So anyway, I want to apologize to those who don't understand Shona. But basically, to bring everybody on board, is I equated this to somebody that wants to get into a marriage, but they don't know how to behave in that marriage to make that marriage successful work. And then people invest their time, give you the resources and the apparatus for you to make that marriage work. And then when you get in there, we then find out that you're under the influence of somebody. Maybe it can be your mom or somebody else, that is actually swaying you to be behaving, in another way. And then we decided to say, you know what? We cannot continue to be part and parcel of the advisors, to this marriage, because at the end of the day, you are not thinking independently because you are under a spell of somebody who is forcing you to think in another way. So now, what I'm now pointing out to is ZEC as an organization. You remember our election system was changed. And we moved to a BVR system whereby the voters' roll was going to be a voters' roll that is going to be underpinned by, biometrics. Your information gets stored according to your, biometrics. And we needed support. ZEC said, they do not have, the capacity to run such, a system, even though it is a system that we said, okay, we need, that system. And then now, this is where now the support, is now coming in. So the terms and conditions and whatever it is, they are already set. They are already there. There's nothing that the EU is coming in with here to try and change what is already there, what already exists. What EU were just trying to say is, or what the outcome that they say, or what they were saying to EU, to ZEC, is as per your mandate, demonstrate your independence, demonstrate transparency, demonstrate your ability to produce free, fair, and credible elections. So if you are looking at those, terms, or if we are looking at those, can we really say that, there's some sort of capture that the EU wanted, to do on ZEC, or trying to sway ZEC, to be produced or to be doing something that was outside of their mandate in terms of running this election and producing a free and fair, election? I don't think, there's anything, that we can say, or that we can isolate and say that, the EU, they actually came in here to try and influence, the voter to vote, for the opposition, which is the narrative that some folks are trying to put out there. And this is what, we are saying. Whatever, this is what Mtisi is saying. Whatever it is, that has happened, or what has forced ZEC to make a U-turn, has got nothing to do with you, with me, with whatever, but it has got everything to do with ZEC and their failure to do what they said they would do. So this idea now of wanting to find blame on anybody else apart from ZEC, who knew as an organization that they needed to be presiding over the running of this election and produce a result that is transparent, a result that is not coerced, a result that is credible. We are here now trying to bring in a narrative which I am seeing as a narrative that wants to take center stage, whereby somebody now wants to shift the blame to where it is not supposed to be, to shift the blame and try and accuse this organization that is pulling out its funding and say, Kutizo, we are pulling out your funding because you did not get what you wanted. No, it was not what EU wanted.
Gerrard, and I don't think you understood where I'm coming from.
No,
right?
I'm understanding where you're coming from.
No.
Yes,
no,
I am understanding.
You are now reframing everything that I've said.
Yeah, because that is where you are heading. Because can you tell me on what basis would ZEC
we are
sue
here analyzing? We are here analyzing what has happened.
Yeah, but can you tell me on what basis can ZEC be sued? Because you said, remember, you said you don't know the circumstances that are obtaining here, or
neither
I
do
do
you,
know,
because
I do
no
know
one
because
has
I am telling you where this came from.
And who's
Because
going to be the arbiter?
You are not stretching your mind way back to where this started.
Who's going to be the arbiter? Who's going to be the judge?
Who's going to be the arbiter is, do we need an arbiter on things, that are straightforward?
issues to do with donations and money.
It's not
They are
Why
about
are you saying
issues
it's
to
a
do.
donation? Sorry, Anko Jedza.
It's not a
Anko
yes.
Jedza.
Why are you saying it?
Anko
You
Jedza.
know, it was
Hold on.
a donation.
Whatever it is, it's a funding. Was it a loan? Whatever
You don't know what it was,
but
KK.
but
All right,
it
KK.
doesn't.
Okay. I think the first mistake that you made is when you came up here to present, you told us that you the only thing that you understand is banking. So everything, if it's outside the scope of it not being a term sheet, then it's just above your weight. You cannot, and I think your submission then just went on to further substantiate that. So here we're not talking about a term sheet. We are talking about we have given you the background to say how did then ZEC end up getting funding, okay, from the UNDP, right? And when you look at the background, there were problems that were meant to be addressed, okay? Problems that we faced in 2013. I think we spoke about this. Maybe we're not here, right? And also the fact that ZEC did not have the capacity. They needed money to make sure that they implement the BVR. That's when the UNDP came into the picture. So yes, ZEC, we can provide the funding. But again, you need to go back to the European Union observation report of 2013. Okay, if you can go back there, read that report. And then from that report, because the difference between the European Union and maybe other observers is, right, they will come through, or they came through in 2013. Then they were like, ZEC, we felt that, in terms of the way that you ran this election, you could have done better, right? But they did not stop there. They then went ahead and said, we can help you. Because ZEC, they responded, right? So ZEC in 2013, at least, then they could respond. They did not need proxies, or they did not need ZANU-PF to respond on their behalf, or people like you to respond on their behalf. Right, so ZEC responded then in 2013. Right,
so you just
hold
about
on. I'm not
me.
attacking you. I'm not attacking you.
I'm
it's
not
a rebuttal.
Who said I was responding? Who says I was responding on behalf of ZEC?
Let me just make my points, KK. Right, so KK. Right, so they responded. In their response, that's when now they made it known to UNDP that they did not have the capacity, especially to deal with the deceased votes, people that appeared on the 2013 voters roll because of Nikuv and the Registrar General, problems with the Registrar General, right? That's when UNDP came in and said, we can help you with the funding. Okay, brother? Right? So UNDP is coming in with that. So now when you want to reduce this to a term sheet, I'm like, oh my goodness, how can you do this, JKK? Like, how can you?
I have not.
How can
you are
do this?
reframing.
Now you are talking
this
about
is what I don't agree
suing.
with.
Yes,
I gave
hold on.
the conditions and the basis
now you're
upon
talking
which
about
money,
suing. When you don't understand, one thing that you need to do is get to
come
understand
on,
the
Smarterz.
background
You're
first.
better than that.
No, you are better than that. Okay, get to understand the background first. Right? What was the background? Right? In that background, there was a tender process that took place. KK, I know you've got knowledge and vast in terms of tenders, how they, as a banker, right? You look at the specifications, how, the whatever tender documents were produced by ZEC, right? And in those tender documents, you are going to pick, things that we're discussing, issues to do with transparency, but most importantly, accountability around the voters' roll, accountability around, the whole process, from voter education, mobilization, and what happens on the polling day, right? Everything was included in there. And the problems, the challenges that ZEC faced in 2018, right? When you go to 2018, go and look at the European Union Observer Report as well, and look at the challenge that were raised. Please compare those challenges with what was produced in 2013 and 2018, okay? Then after that, now come to 2023, right? You look at that statement and why they are withdrawing. You look at the terms that were there, right, for them to provide that funding to ZEC. But it's very difficult, brother. Then when you come up here, you don't know whether you are coming or you are going. You don't know whether this is covered by a
So
term sheet.
in a nutshell, if I get you correctly,
Yes.
you have given us this whole background, and what you are trying to do is that this funding is attached to a specific purpose, and within that purpose, it will be evaluated on certain outcomes to say that we are going to continue or withdraw this funding. And now I'm trying to tie that to the institution of a Chapter 12 of a Chapter 12 organization that we've agreed and should be resting on independence. Funding, we always know that funding will sway things one way or the other. Look at crimes that are created. People look at financial motives. All those things are critical in terms of evaluating. So funding is not just something.
Okay. So did you expect ZEC? No. Let's deal with that issue, right? Let's deal with that contentious issue, right? You brought in the funding. So where do you expect ZEC to run without funding? If your answer is no, where do you expect that funding to come from?
No. Or
Nice
the question
matters.
is, why was it allowed for this Chapter 12 independent organization to be funded by an outside agent?
So that's the discussion that we then have to broaden and say, was this subjected to Parliament?
Yes.
How did it happen? But the optics of somebody pulling their funding from pulling from a commitment that they had made to fund an organization and tying it to a certain outcome, then therefore means that they were soliciting a certain outcome.
Which certain outcome?
Are you listening to what I'm saying?
Which certain outcome? Yes.
We are here discussing that the funding has been pulled.
Yes.
And you guys are giving the background that this is the reason that the funding has been pulled.
And what are the reasons?
So there is an outcome. There is an outcome attached to the funding.
What is the outcome?
That they are looking for.
What is the outcome?
The things that you have been mentioning, they want to
those things. A credible election is the outcome.
That's the outcome. Let's agree on the outcome, because I know you ZANU-PF people, right? Right. So
now I'm ZANU-PF.
No, you are, man. We know that. So KK. So the outcome was for ZEC to deliver a free, fair, and credible election according to our constitution.
So who's going to be the judge of that?
Right.
Is that in the agreement?
Okay. So you see why I was saying at least let's agree on the outcome, because it looks like you still have problems with that.
No, I still have problems in that, because already the definition of a free, fair, credible election can, in some instances, be subjective.
But it's there in the constitution, right? That's what our constitution says. Or you want us to go back and say,
have we subjected this process to constitutional processes?
Yes,
including taking the matter to the court.
Which courts?
And
why would you want to take it to the court?
That's the constitution. Don't pick and choose aspects of the constitution.
Oh my goodness! So if for something to be deemed constitutional or unconstitutional, you have to take it to the court always. So
what do you mean always?
Yeah, that's what we are saying.
Where there's a dispute,
there was no dispute. There was no dispute.
For you to finally come to the conclusion that it was not a free, fair, credible, where are you basing that on?
Where are you getting that question from? We are still discussing the outcome.
You see, you're shifting
so
if you continue shifting, I can't. How
right?
Guys.
That's where the confusion is.
That's where the aspect of the constitution.
Mirai, to help out Mkomani KK on on that, it was being said, Guti. The EU took into consideration the various observer mission reports and what those said pertaining to the election that was conducted in Zimbabwe. Because if you listened to, let me bring this Mkoma KK
of our engagement.
Support comes in the European Union. On the other hand, the support to the Zimbabwean electoral process will be implemented by the government and UNDP and aims to contribute to the consolidation of democracy and peace, with particular emphasis on inclusion. particularly representation from women, youth, and persons with disabilities in the democratic processes. The support comes at an opportune time when government is prioritizing the strengthening of good governance in order to foster economic development. Globally, it has been acknowledged that building institutional capacities is critical for economic growth and development.
The second financing agreement concerns our support to the upcoming election in 2023. And looking to next year, I think we all agree that credible and peaceful elections will be a key element that will allow Zimbabwe to create a prosperous environment and to make the National Development Strategy 1 and Vision 2030 a reality. To contribute to that, and in line with the NDS 1 strategy of strengthening the capacity of independent commissions, the European Union is committing today 4.5 million euros to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to deliver on its mandate. And actually, when I presented my credentials to His Excellency President Mnangagwa back in October, and I asked him, how could the EU support the elections next year? He suggested support to a Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, which I think is a good thing, because also we have done it in the past, and I think it's also a continuation of our engagement. So I'm very happy we can make this happen today, and obviously we have also other donors joining, in particular France, who is also a member of what we call the Team Europe, and I think the funds will be then administered by the UNDP in a basket fund. Finally, the support to ZEC will also be complemented by additional support to civil society on electoral litigation, advocacy, voter education, and monitoring.
Right. So that right there.
Reaction, we're now joined by far-right the European Union.
On the other hand, right. So that right there, ladies and gentlemen, Mkoma K, I don't know whether I had you had heard, that audio, before, but that is that was on the day. I think it was 22 November, 2022. That was on the day when that money or that agreement or whatever agreements, were signed, and it was a package worth 47 million, euros. But in that package, there was also that 4.5 million euro that was going to to support ZEC to actually carry out its mandate, its constitutional mandate. So the constitutional mandate of ZEC, I think we can all look it up. We can all go on Google, is there. We can understand what the constitutional mandate of ZEC is. So these guys, they did not redraw the template here. They just said, we are giving this money in support of ZEC's constitutional mandate, and that constitutional mandate involved producing or making sure that the election in Zimbabwe was going to be free, fair, and credible. So on the basis of what happened, they then looked at the reports. This is contained in their letter or in their press release. They then looked at the reports of the observer missions, and then they came to a conclusion that ZEC did not meet its obligations, or ZEC did not deliver on its mandate, on its constitutional mandate, to be providing an environment that will cater for a free, fair, and credible election. ZEC as an independent body was not independent. ZEC as a body that is supposed to be transparent, it was not transparent. And then now this is where now we are tying in the UNDP and its mandate. What the UNDP was set up for, and what it intended to achieve in Zimbabwe, given the background that has been spoken to. So we are looking at a situation whereby we are having a fund that is there, a fund that is set, and this fund, mind you, is a fund. It is a pot where any person that wants to support the capacity that want to support these organizations in Zimbabwe to be in a position to be capacitated, to be in a position to be carrying out, their mandate. That port, right there, it is there. This is why you saw in February, Japan, actually poured in 1.4 million into that same port, because it is the money that is supposed to be building institutions that are capable of operating independently, transparently, and be in a position to be meeting their mandate. So that is where we are at the present moment, Mukoma. So now I'm going to open up, this, conversation such that you and Mukoma, Smarterz, I'll give you only 5 minutes to do whatever it is that you want to do with the information, that is now there, your arguments, your back and forth, because I want us to then move on. Marcy is she's now tired of putting, her hand up. I want her to put her hand down, but she will only do that when she makes, a contribution. And then we'll then go on now to other speakers who want to make, the contribution. So now, you two guys, Mukoma K, Smart, and Smarterz, your 5 minutes start from now. Inini ndanyarara, but mukaona ndapindira mova mazuva 5 minutes dzenyu dzakwana, inenge yanguva yaMarcy Wilks inenge to speak. So here, your 5 minutes start now.
Anko Ged, just to let you know that I wanted to respond to Marcy as well. But KK, you can go first.
Yes. So I was saying there's a broad range of issues here that should be under discussion, not just to limit it to.
So
firstly,
open your own space.
The issues that you are,
what do you mean?
The issues that you are presenting, Smarterz. How do I? Because you're disturbing my thought process now. And why are you doing?
But why
that?
are you attacking the topic? Just make your submission.
So the issue is the issue is what did I want to say? The things that you spoke about were, what the president said in that meeting and things like that would have to be reduced to an agreement. So that is the agreement that I said I'm not privy to.
So you're
I
not
don't
qualified
know
to comment. Go and look for it first. Then you can't comment on something. No, but you can't comment on something that you do not know. So it's okay, JKK. It's fine. So thanks, man, for making that, such a concession. It's good, man. You cannot comment on an agreement on things that you have no clue about. That's where the issue was, right? So the voice that you heard in that recording, that was Ntuli Ncube. Is that correct, Anko Ged? The first person to
yes.
That was Ntuli Ncube, a war minister of finance, right? So for you then to come to a space and say, there was a dispute, they were supposed to go to the court. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? But I'm not going to take you to task.
So the issues that you spoke about, Anko Ged, right? The EU is actually showing its hand, right? Because they are making a conclusion based on preliminary reports, reports that are and these are not final reports. There's still a whole process for these to become final reports. In other words, this is where I'm attaching the issue that their funding becomes attached to certain outcomes. And that complicates or compromises a chapter 12 institution. So there's a whole process here that we need to speak to as the citizenry of Zimbabwe. The same way I hear that there are political scores that other people are trying to make here. The same way people are trying to protect ZEC from this imagined capture by a political party. The same way I want, or we should be speaking to the protection of ZEC from funding.
Yeah, if you could allow me to make my submission, otherwise, Makutojiga 5 minutes this. Thank you so much. All right,
you can go ahead.
Yes, thanks so much, brother. Okay, so I think now we are in agreement. We can discuss that other part of the question maybe in our next space. So there you go, Uncle Gerrard. So let me quickly respond to Marcy. Right. So Marcy, when she came up here, there were certain words that she used. For me, I would take exceptions to those words, especially the excitables. Right. And why do I say this? I say this because my position as a Triple C supporter is there was never an election in Zimbabwe, and we need to have a free and fair election. That was my position, right? We need to have a free, fair election that will allow, Zimbabweans to go out there and express themselves, right? That's what I'm yearning for, right? So what happened in Zimbabwe, it was unconstitutional, it was fraudulent. Unfortunately, we could not approach the Constitutional Court because it is my understanding that the Constitutional Court is captured. So there was no way that I was going to expect the Constitutional Court to overturn the result. So it was then against that background then that I was in full support with the party's position to say they are not going to approach the Constitutional Court and they were going to pursue other means, right? And these other means, I would have perceived them as political means or diplomatic means, right? So this is what happens now when I see the European Union coming through with a strong statement like this, right? The moment, European Union comes with a statement, it means my position has been vindicated, right? It's vindicated. It's not like it doesn't speak to my influence to the European Union. But I'm saying, right, I have been supported by the European Union. For instance, the same way I would also stand with the SADC's preliminary report and say, I'm in full support of the
1 minute.
Okay. I'm in full
1 minute.
Okay. I'm in full support of the SADC preliminary report because somehow I have been vindicated. And there has to be somewhere there. I know, while at least I'm against the external, locus of control, right? It's because of the nature of politics that we have in Zimbabwe that it's very difficult for citizens to go out there and protest and force the government or force the powers that be to recant on their position. So now the moment I get SADC, EU, and other big organizations coming out with statements, I will celebrate those. Right? I will celebrate those because I feel my position has been vindicated. But me celebrating those is not like I then suddenly become excitable, right? And I'm influencing. And I should, when ZANU-PF then accuse me of calling for sanctions, then I should reference. I feel that what that was not fair. So we have our position, and if we are going to get solidarity, whether it's coming from the European Union, SADC, whether it's coming from other political parties from Zimbabwe, we feel vindicated, and there's a reason for us to talk about it, not that we are excitable. That
Right.
was going to be my response to Mas. Thanks.
Right, thank you very much for that. Mkoma K, Ramamuri Papo, Karamaraza saying contribution mozo ningi anjapa mkana. I'll give you another opportunity to come through because you are saying that I think what you're saying is which is the EU cannot have their cake and eat it. But anyway, that is something that you would want to be expurgating on and expanding on. But I want to hear from Mercy, can I give you your opportunity, to respond? And I'm giving you 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Uncle Ged. Smarterz, I'm glad that the only thing you are upset about is semantics, not the principle of what I'm saying. So we can't argue on that, really. If the only problem is that narratively we may have to meet up with ZANU-PFs who are forming a narrative based on your support, these things are not the fundamentals. As long as we agree on the principle that what caused the withdrawal of funding must be amplified, then we are good. Whether you go off and become happy or not happy, we will both be agreeing that what must be amplified is the cause. So we are good. Semantics are neither here nor there. Politics is a game of convincing the other. And we hope that you win when the argument of semantics comes onto the political table in the next round of campaigns. But to answer to KK, you could be right, but we've already had a response about the way forward. There will not be a suing or a challenge to the EU on this withdrawal. I think it was Nick that already said we don't need that money. Zimbabwean taxpayers' money is enough to fund this. We prepare in advance. His statement was very dismissive, almost to say we didn't need the money anyway. But I think what is fundamental is what that money was supposed to enhance, to improve. It wasn't to say that ZEC did not have the mandate to do those things anyway, because those conditions that they were funding were already based on what the Constitution of Zimbabwe mandates ZEC to do. They did not go outside of what the expectation of ZEC was, with or without the funding. The expectation remains. I can help you to be more efficient in delivering that. It does not mean if I withdraw that, the mandate to deliver suddenly dissipates. It doesn't. ZEC is still mandated by the Constitution of Zimbabwe to do the elections in the manner in which the EU was funding anyway. They didn't bring outside, but now the narrative that ZANU-PF has been saying that you cannot trust Western governments or institutions to fund the politics of Zimbabwe based on its what overbearing nature, to start to impose their own intentions. Now we can go back and say, if ZANU-PF has always known that to be true, it has been receiving EU funding via this Chapter 12 institution, to the point of government itself recommending the continuation of that funding. That speech that we had is not the establishment of funding. It's a continuation of funding that already exists, that was known by government, and government was endorsing it. So on what grounds can the government now come back and say the Western governments have a tendency to perpetuate this regime change agenda, when now we see who's been facilitating Western governments to interfere? It is ZANU-PF. It is continuing to give ZEC, to give EU this through pass. It's not the opposition that is enjoying funding has been purported to the public. The generality of the public has been told that the opposition has been receiving funding, yet the government has been withdrawing funding to opposition and directing that funding to the state itself via its Chapter 12 institutions. So to me, that is the narrative that must stand true. Zimbabwean government, if it believes the EU has got a regime change agenda, and it has been funding those institutions, it means them as the Second Republic were actually sponsored by the West to regime change the government of Robert Mugabe through funding from the EU. So many
Right.
things.
Thank you very much. Stay there. Right. Okay. I want to bring in, other speakers as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining me, thank you very much, for coming through. Right. We want to carry on, this discussion and bring in, fresh ideas as always. But, I think when I started, this conversation, the trouble is, we get people to come in midway or, whatever. But when I started, this conversation, I started by acknowledging that, there might be a need to broaden, this conversation, because at the end of the day, when we're speaking to the issues of independence, transparency, and so forth, and the involvement of a Chapter 12, organization, it may mean that, we open up, the conversation. So, Mkoma K, you're not wrong to try and, bring in, this other aspect or this other side of this, of the conversation, like you attempted to do, but it is always that we get people that interact and push back. So I want to establish now a new lineup. I don't know whether Morpho, do you established one, or because when I left I said Gutizo, I gave you Mercy and Nkoma KK, so which means I think it is proper for me to get in and bring in a new lineup. So Zim Dollar, I want you to go next, followed by Citizen, followed by Artisan and Mkoma Castro. So let us go with that order, please.
Yes, thank you to the host and to everybody in the space. It is important that we all understand that there is nothing to celebrate about the withdrawal of this funding to ZEC by the EU. Why am I saying that there is nothing to celebrate? Because we have seen that the enemy, which is ZANU-PF, we are dealing with savages here. We are dealing with people who have they don't even consider the rule of law. They don't consider the rules. These are criminals. So I think there's nothing really to celebrate about the withdrawal of funding. Actually, the EU also, the EU has got double standards, I think, because I think we all know how ZANU operates. So we all know where that money went because ZEC didn't have ballot papers on the election day. So we all know where that money went. It was not to better or to help ZEC to deliver a free and fair election. So I think also the opposition, the leaders of the opposition, especially the former structures of the opposition, should learn and see what kind of a foe they are fighting and change strategy. If you look at the liberation struggle all over, even in Southern Africa, there was a time when the ANC had to change strategy and they had to establish MK even at home. People had to change the strategy and look for new strategies because now, you see, ZANU-PF is a different animal. We need to change the strategy. This thing of running in circles and repeating the same mistakes each and every time there's an election is disputed, and then and so on. Nothing changes. So I think it's being foolish when we repeat the same mistakes. I think now it's time to change the strategy and speak about an armed struggle. Thank you. I thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Let me go to the next speaker, Citizen A. Thank you very much. Take the mic, please.
Thanks, Uncle. And I don't even have a lot to say, except to say that Zimbabwean government, they are puppets of the West. That's just really all I need to say. They are puppets of the West. Why? Because they have made it a point that if foreigners are coming in with money, or if there is any communication between the opposition and any other, like where there's a foreign minister or foreign leader involved, right? Dignitaries, they make it a point that they will say, puppets of the West, right? And then when you see them, right, when you see the same people, the exact same people, right, when they go and hold meetings, they call it re-engagement, bilateral agreements, memorandum of understanding, re-engagement, trying to be accommodated in the Commonwealth. It's funding, even though this is coming from UNDP, it's funding because, we've got chapters in the Constitution that allows it, yada, 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 yada. Bunch of nonsense, a bunch of nonsense puppets. These people, puppets. ZANU-PF and Zimbabwe government, puppets of the West. Now, that should be my first contribution, that these people are these are puppets of the West and the East and the South and the North. My puppets. Because what they term other people is exactly what they are. They just don't want to hear it, but that is exactly what they are. Anyway, secondly, while I agree that the funding was coming through UNDP, it's very important to also kind of like just understand that UNDP's mandate, I think their mission and vision is really to, they say their mandate is to end poverty and build democratic governance, help with rule of law and inclusive institutions, right? Now, I think that it would have been really, really easy, right? For EU or for any other government, right, to work with ED. I don't necessarily think that they only want to be cooperative when they're working with a leader that's not a democratically chosen leader, right? In 2017, post the coup, there were so many dignitaries from across the globe, and all of you can testify, right? They were in support, right? But the thing is that when it comes to ZANU-PF politics, if there is no support, then they will say all kinds of things. They will shame those people. They will batter them. They will insult them. They'll tell them, we don't need you. They'll pull the middle finger. They throw tantrums. You know, they're like that child that just throws tantrums when they don't get what they want. And then when they are praised, all of a sudden, kumashingoti not bebenu kupepenuka, as in kutoita see light, you know, like all of a sudden when they are supported, they like it, but when they are criticized, they'll go on national television, they'll make documentaries, they will spray propaganda, they'll put it in newspapers. You know, a very good example is Joseph Kalimwe. He's 29. That boy is 29. He's you know, he's so young, right? He just happened to be a popular activist in UPND, right? But he was on national television. That's how bitter and shallow ZANU-PF can get. So regarding this funding, right, that has been withdrawn, right? It has got nothing to do with the opposition. It has got nothing to do with ZANU-PF. It has got nothing to do with any single individual in the road. It just has a lot to do with also just the guidelines of the mission and vision for that program, because it's the United Nations Development Program, right? So if they have also certain standards that they use, right, in terms of helping with development, right? If one of those things is to establish that leaders are democratically elected, because UN is United Nations, it's not ZANU-PF Nations Development Program, right? It's United Nations, nations that are united. Now, you can't then say that the UN is wrong, AU is wrong, SADC is wrong, everybody else is wrong except Cyril Ramaphosa. And I don't know which other leader came, you know, to that inauguration, to that fake inauguration, that bottom of the barrel pits inauguration. You know, those people, those very few people are the only correct ones. Everyone else is wrong. So, in conclusion, what I just want to say is that EU has every right to withdraw its funding, not because Nelson Chamisa did not win, not because Idi did not win, not because Maduku did not win. They have every right when the electoral body of a country that is being supported is not crystal clear. And that's what it is. I can tell you for a fact, when that 2017 thing happened, right, and there were leaders that were backing ED, right, they knew it was a coup, but they still went on to support him because they thought, oh, you know what, look, welcome development, because we want everybody to be moving in a certain direction, right? Now he has proven over 7 years that he is incapable, incompetent, not professional. He's got no idea what he's doing. That guy has no clue what he's doing. So EU has a right, right? Sorry, I'm almost finishing. EU has a right, and they are within their right. And the people that are saying maybe they are basing it off a preliminary report. When you say they are basing it off a preliminary report, what I want to then ask a person like KK, if they're saying it's a preliminary report that they're basing on, maybe from SADC or AU or whatever, or China or whatever, right? Based on those reports, do you then, as an individual, feel that it was a free, fair, and credible election? Is that how you see it? Because it's one thing to say that, oh, it was a report. It's another thing to say what was the reality. So thank you so much. I think I'm going to go to the listeners.
All right. Thank you very much, for that. Appreciate. Let me go to the artisan, and then you're going to be followed by, Castro, and then I'm going to, circle back, come to Koma Leonard K, and Koma Peter Mtisi. If you are still there, I'll then bring you into the max in Mercy Wilkes. If you are still there, I'll bring you, into the mix as well. Right. So let us, go with that order, please.
Good evening. How are you? I hope you are well.
I'm good, and you? Thanks, Nkoma. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for giving me this particular this opportunity. Before my submission, I just want to say that European foreign policy towards Africa is always the same for centuries. It will never change. They play a balancing game, so which is good as what one of my brothers said. It's a double standards. They play this double standards game. I remember 3 months ago, there's a conference which is gonna be like in Pretoria. We were asked to write an abstract. So I choose this topic, European foreign policy towards Africa. I articulated my face because I had done my research very well and my background, comparing to what they normally do in Africa. It revolves around the economy and the resources. So I articulated all those things, right? In response to that, after about 1 year, 2 months, I think 3 weeks now, they responded to me. They wanted me to change some of the things which I had mentioned in that abstract form, for them to approve it, so that I can be one of the speakers of the conference. It can be added onto the new framework, the concept which they are adding onto to their research and updating their library on the conference which is in Pretoria. I said no, not for now. I'll just stand with what I stand with. Then they wrote me again to say that okay, I'm not going to be included in this forum, which is in October. Then we'll probably consider you on another topic next year. So it's something which is clear, whereby we don't have to argue about this, but we need to get the facts, the background, to make sure that we see the truth instead of just sometimes following narratives which doesn't have this truth. Then when it comes to this funding, if we don't have normally the terms of reference of what the people, what they've agreed on to, you're definitely not gonna have much saying to it. Or like what some of other brothers were saying, that we have to go to court, we have to do this. There is no reason to go to court. To go to court for what? They agreed on whatever they agreed on there, right? Because they have an agenda of why they are putting on that money. They don't just sponsor. They always have an interest in something, but sometimes it is hidden, but they exactly know what they want. They have tabled everything in there to make sure that when they play that game in such a particular way, they have calculated their outcome. So that outcome, that end goal, if it's not met after performance management, just after this disaster election, you see, which we likely to call it was just like a meta game. That's why they are withdrawing, because what they wanted with that money which they funding, the end goal did not it did not achieve the end goal. So that's why they are withdrawing. ZEC, they've got the agreements in there. Why they were being sponsored up to that particular funding? They know it. They never mentioned it or responding to it. Then when it comes to our own politics, Zimbabwe politics, especially institutions and all these organizations, we need to like cross-examine each and every organization and see where we are. For example, if you say ZEC, we've got ZEC, we've got ZRP, we've got Zimbabwe National Army, we've got things like ZBC, then you come on to ZANU-PF, we've got CCC, which is like the major opposition. So if you were to cross-examine all these institutions, you can actually come clear with the state of affairs of Zimbabwean politics, where we are actually failing and what is actually happening. You see, but now the stage which we are now is more of a diplomatic stage, in the sense that a lot now has been exposed. Instead, if we had said, okay, we're going to protest quickly, those guys, they were prepared already because of the institutions which we know for this election to go to the court before maybe the accuser of the Judicial Commission, that one headed by Malaba. It would be a waste of time to go on there. So it's like they've been exposed. The pot is boiling. That's why even that bill from the parliament, which he could not sign, they said they have to take it back to the parliament to be negotiated. He knows, so they are playing games. But it's unfortunate that some of the spin doctors which are in there, they are actually like feeding giants at the moment. They are no longer having direction because they've got too much to handle. They've got too much to handle, something which is on their plate. So us as citizens of Zimbabwe, we just have to remove that that cloud of anxiety. That cloud of anxiety that okay, it's gonna be like this. Let's follow the step. Let's follow the step. Let's move. Let's move and connect this thing. That's when we will establish the gaps in what is actually happening to us. You understand? Then the appropriate time to take action will definitely come. So let's these things continue like this. Let them being exposed. That is exactly what you want. The mistakes which they are making, they are good. Because look at it, for example, ZEC. Like my sister Mercy was saying that, I'm sure it's Mercy, that if we've got two commissioners who are coming from the vice president's kids there, that's all nepotism and everything. Then you check on the cabinet, you check on this thing. So that's why I'm in this situation. You see where we are. So we will never develop as long as these things are like this. But the best thing is that it is happening. It is happening now. Let them dismantle it themselves there. Let them fight themselves in there. We keep on pushing fast and slow until we get there. It can take time, but we'll definitely get there because they are tying themselves and the rope is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Let me go to Nkoma Castro. Nkoma Castro, take the mic, please.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say, as a country, it's actually embarrassing that, we're here gathered discussing about EU funding of 5 million in a country of roughly 17 to 20 million people. It's a budget that is not even enough to run a primary school.
15 actually.
In Europe, the EU have pledged the $5 million equivalent. The UNDP something, that one is the United Nations. It's under United Nations NGO, and others wanted to put money there. And if you listen to that clip that Gerrard played, it says the funding was not actually going directly to ZEC. The EU funding was going to UN, is it UNDP or something? I might miss some of the prefixes. But whatever that was it, where they were putting the funds were not going directly into ZEC coffers. Then two, the most important part of the election, they did not put the money into it. They put only 1 million. They've spent $1 million on the total election out of 5 million. What does that tell? It shows they went in without good faith. They did not expect this thing to run out the way they wanted. So they de-risked and put 1 million of what they pledged. And as a country, we're bashing our heads. Like, okay, let's say they continue. What were they going to continue funding ZEC for after elections? Elections are done. The part which was crucial for them to fund is already done. They should have funded ZEC's logistics. If they had put 5 million up front and goes into ZEC coffers, Maybe ZEC could have run this election far much better. It would have been resourced to have enough logistics, enough pickup trucks to move the ballot papers on time. Maybe you have other experts be able to bring consultants and whatever, but they didn't fund this thing. They went in because they wanted to put pressure on the government of the day to act in a certain kind of behavior. So if they really wanted to put money, they would have put the whole 5 million at the beginning of the process, because that's where it's crucial.
Did ZEC tell you that they needed the whole 5 million?
It's my time to speak. I have my 5 minutes. You can talk when I finish. So respect yourself. So
5 minutes of propaganda.
So if they pledged,
guys, let him speak. Let him speak.
So if they've pledged a small budget that is not even enough to run a primary school in Europe for the whole country of Zimbabwe, and out of that they only put $1 million, that tells you that they were just there as snake oil salesmen to kind of steer the behavior of the government for whatever outcome in their interest. These people don't come in without their own interest, and it's naive of our politicians and our government officials to think that entities or countries that have sanctions on you, economic sanctions on you, military sanctions on you, for example, EU have armed sanctions on our defense forces to weaken the country, right? And the same people then come and say, we're going to help you in your process. They are not a neutral player, right? They are interested party. That's why you see that they came in bad faith. You give 1 out of 5, you give 20% effort. If we take 1 million, they actually put in the pot. Out of 5 million they pledged, that's 20%. That tells you that it was just a snake oil salesman campaign they did there, and our people are not mature enough. That's why European people describe an African as childish-like, because we don't analyze things. Guys. Now I'm speaking in Shona kuti tinyatsonzwisana. Sometimes kutaura language dzevamwe vanhu izvi zvinoita kuti tirase certain comprehension.
Ko vasingazoshona.
Havachanzwa havo.
Your time is up. Uncle
No,
Jed,
my time is not up. So the issue ndeyekuti ka
1 minute mkoma pedza
2028 tichaona futi ivava vakuru vedu vemunyika munomu vachidzokera futi kune vanhu ivava vekuwest uko, vouya futi vosukurudzwa zvakare onzi tokuisirai funding tozodai, asi chinobuda hapana, because funding yacho does not come through proper channels. Inopinda through NGOs, haifiliwi. It's the same thing when they talk about funding Zimbabwe, that they are bringing funding. It goes through my NGOs. The NGOs end up buying cars and these, they build their own houses. On the ground, you don't see anything. If I ask you right now to show me any infrastructure in the past 10 years, they are built from a Western country or Western funding. Hapana kana bridge, kana tower light, Rema light. So we need to move away from this Western funding thing. Kana vauyawo vakaisa zvavaisa, totaura kuti iko zvino update vanhu kuti iko zvino pa 5 million paya tapiwa 1, because vamwe iko zvino they think there was a big amount of money. There's no money ekutoti tingatoti it's an embarrassment as a country kuti tinopiwa 2 cents chicken feed, 5 million mari
vakubreaka mukoma vakubreaka
aiwa kani akulenda mukoma kasolenda aichimomira kana anokubreaka seko
mukoma Gerrard add me another 2 minutes kuti
aiwa lenda.
Okay, so in short, we need to self-respect ourselves. We don't, our political processes, our internal conflicts are ours. When we bring third parties, it does not do favors for us. So let's not dwell on funding or try to sue them. It's their money. So they take it. It's an embarrassment for them. They pledged 5 and they paid out only 1 million to their NGOs.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mukoma Castro. Right, right. Okay, so the next speaker, can I call upon, let me call upon Peter. Peter asked me to talk about, let me give him the opportunity. And Peter. May Peter Tauri.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Peter.
Thank you, Nkoma Gerrard. Yeah, I only surface here and there, especially panenge pambo kushwa propaganda, because I want to say the record is straight. I have a very big problem. Vanhu vanoda kuuya kunoita contribution of things they know nothing about. Pane vambotaura mumashure apo vakati research iri important. When someone does not even know kuti chinonzi development partner chii, what is EU, and iyo UNDP yacho inoshandidzana sei neEuropean Union, then I tend to wonder kuti saka what are we here for? Kuti ngoti ndangosvikawo ndikangotaurawo zvanazvo. That's very sad. Anyway, let's correct this thing. The funding from the audio that we all listened to, the funding that Mutuli and that ambassador of EU agreed upon was never to fund the 2023 election. Ndodoti pajeke ipapo. Kana zvibvira Mukoma Gerrard ndofunga vachadzokorora kuplaya that audio tinyaso kuteerera. Kana kuchinzi to fund ZEC to strengthen democracy or democratic processes. Ndiri kukorekta nyaya yekuti vamwe vari kuti kwai vakaunza 1 million, imwe yaida kuzouya 2024 yanga ichashandei. Democratic process system is not an event. Election was part of activity yaifana kuitwa paperiod iri kutaurwa, but they were not funding a polling day event sokutaura kwaita vapedzera kutaura. Then I'll go on to say,
so why are they withdrawing the funding if it was
Mkoma Castro, can you keep your mic on the lock, because you don't want it to do the things that you were despising. And itika mangamjiramba mimi kuitwa interjected. No buts. Ngoma Peter and Berry.
All right. Rega tizame kuvabetsera. Ndambotaura pamashure apa ndichiti even our Ministry of Finance, ministry chaiyo amu yehurumende, the Ministry of Finance is funded by these development partners. The same applies to Zimstart, kuti kutonzi kwaitwa consumer price index iyai, kuti panoitwa poverty data mchichichi. That fund is from those vatiri kunyepera kuti nhasi nokuti vari kuti the conditions that aikupirai mari hamuna kudzifulfill according to my observation reports akabuda. Then we tend to like hatatisina basa nayo mari yoyo because we can fund our own. We can't fund our own because Zimbabwe is broke. This is why muchiona pataurwa naambassador pachiratidza kuti he actually talked to the president akapa go ahead yokuti fundai pakati, kureva kuti the president had that appreciation yokuti nyika yake haina mari. Saka to then come here as a mujiba and say hatisina basa nekamiliyoni kaka, when your own president thought kuti ndakavhiwa pakuru nemari iyoyo, then ndo pandati paya ngatimboenda tinoita research. I think rega ndimboenda kumalisteners ndimbonzwa vamwe vachitaura. Thank you, Mkoma Gerrard. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. Right. Legainti unze Mkoma Leonard. Tora Chimuti, you're going to be followed by Citizen Z, Anotida. I'll bring in Koma K. I'll bring in Mercy Wicks, and then I'll bring in Smarterz. Let us go with that order, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Thank you so much. Mkoma wandinakidza unzi Mkoma ndi Castro. Propaganda dzacho nadzizoita kumana. Anyway, let me just be brief and to the point. You remember those days Mugabe saying, Blair, keep your England and I will keep my Zimbabwe. We can do without IMF. We can do without Commonwealth. And we all saw the consequences. Sorry. This is the kind of a problem we have with ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF wants to be at a certain angle where it detects the pace whilst other people will be following. We saw Robert Mugabe, that's where the problem started. And his predecessor, Emerson Mnangagwa, is continuing with the same stick from Robert Mugabe. ZANU-PF has been scoring its own goals for a very, very long time, since time immemorial. It's only that some of these things now are being exposed because of the internet and the social media, the advancement of the social media in the super information highway. We are getting such kind of things. Imagine if there was no Twitter or X, formerly Twitter, X. There was no Facebook, there was no WhatsApp. We are not going to get that later. And why do you think we only have one television station in Zimbabwe? So we were going to be bombarded with every propaganda coming from this party masquerading as a democratic party in the name of ZANU-PF. So it has been scoring its own goals. Why, in the first place, when they were asked by EU to fund the elections, they were supposed to say, no, you are foreign, we don't want your foreign aid. What we want to do is we're going to pull out our resources, then we're going to fund our own elections. But actually, we heard that Mnangagwa agreed through the Minister of Finance, Mtuli, that they are going to accept the funding from UNDP and they should fund ZEC. Okay, ZEC failed its mandate to deliver a free and fair, credible election. Okay, what do you think the people would you have funded the ZEC would do after such kind of reports coming from SADC that the election was not free and fair? You know, ZEC is, incapacitated to hold an election, a national election. It's so embarrassing that on the day the voting started, some polling stations in areas where the opposition was strong, they were opened around 4 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 7 a.m. It's so embarrassing that we have come to a situation whereby we say whatever we got from the Zimbabwe electoral process was perfect, yet the whole electoral process was a fraud. I understand maybe these funds were diverted and used on other things rather than running the election. There's no way in the world where a ballot paper runs out of stock on the voting day. To me, ZEC is a bona fide criminal organization masquerading as an independent body. And it cannot be trusted with running elections in Zimbabwe. Right? Maybe we can task them to run a by-election in Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe. Not a national election per se. Whenever ZANU-PF is bruised its ego, they always resort to default settings. A very good example, the Nevers Mumba report. They started attacking Hakainde Hichilema, saying he's a Western puppet. We saw them attacking Joseph Kalimbwe most of the time, saying they are being sent by the West. Nevers Mumba is the West, to such an extent that they can bring or come up, produce a documentary on Nevers Mumba because he did not agree with them. So who are these Western puppies? Whenever Mnangagwa goes out, now there will always the excitement that Mnangagwa is going to Unga. All the excitement. Where is Unga? Is Unga in Africa or it is in Europe? So we are sick and tired of such kind of propaganda coming from the corridors of ZANU-PF. And we want to agree with whatever they're going to tell us. Now with this social media and the information, with a click of a button, you get that information. They cannot run away with it. We need to keep on pushing back and telling them, no, this is not what you're doing. Imagine how many people have access to that, with access to that report from EU, that they are withdrawing the funding. You think people from Uzmamramba, they know this report? Even Njabulo, do they have that report? In conclusion, I would like to say, ZEC yakakanga mbeu, of which we were supposed to plant that seed and come up with a bumper harvest. But it's unfortunate that most of the time, this is how ZANU-PF has been empowering its own elite, political elite, through looting public funds, through looting these kind of funds coming from abroad, buying themselves state-of-the-art cars, sending their children to foreign countries for education and medication whatsoever. Whilst our perinatal hospitals, we don't have even drugs. So this is how they will actually pulling their resources to their own side, impoverishing the poor. It's a gangster, it's a mafia. Look what happened to the gold mafia. It's a mafia which is kept on oiled most of the time. And I heard right now, I've been reading this document about the changing of Zimbabwe Wealth, what to Mutapa. And those institutions like POSB, olive industry, most of the industry, now they are falling under Mutapa. They've strategically positioned themselves to start looking again, to start looting again. We've got Archbishop of Thieves in the government as we speak. So the moment the opposition starts talking to these people with money, they are labeled the puppets. That's where the problem is in Zimbabwe. And we need to dismantle this kind of thinking in order for the country to move forward. Because we cannot allow it to be at the state at which we are right now. It's so embarrassing that they keep on stealing. Sorry, I haven't taken too long. I can land now. ZEC yakakanga mbeu. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Let me go to the next speaker, please.
I think it was me, Angos, yeah?
Yeah, you have to mark your position. Let's go.
It was actually me. Didn't we after Leonard?
Diani?
No,
KK.
ZEC. No, it was ZEC. No, it was ZEC.
And it's
It was KK.
Yes.
You see, the thing is, you see,
Z. What is Z? At the end, just okay. Z is not going anywhere. KK chora things going. They know so Peter Z.
Oh, wakabana kareke atutaura
but
following.
but guys, I gave an order.
ZEC.
Yes.
It was KK. That matters
Because
against me.
I spoke after
guys,
KK. I spoke
I
after
gave an
KK.
order.
Yes,
I gave an order. Smarterz was trying to just bar everything that doesn't agree with what he thinks.
No, KK.
Guys. I'm going to it.
Yes.
Would you allow KK to speak?
No worries.
Okay.
Thank you, citizen. You see, the tragedy of Zimbabwe is that just this morning I was in a space where I actually was saying that I support the CCC for not taking the case to the courts, and I was receiving a lot of blowback from it in that space. I cannot agree with Smarterz on something simply because of what he thinks and this idea that he has. So we can never rally each other on issues that may be of common interest to us, which I find to be very pathetic. But anyway, that's the way it is. That's the way Zimbabwe is. So firstly, what I wanted to say was, number one, I did not say that, to answer to some of the sentiments that were being echoed, I did not say that ZEC must take the EU to court. What I was saying was, or what I wanted to bring attention to, is that there's a whole process which I'm bringing attention to. Whether that process was done in a way that does not impair the operations of the Chapter 12 institution, because funding is very important and where it is coming from. Especially in the light that now somebody just comes up and say they are now pulling that funding. So I'm like, what expectations were actually tied around this funding? Does that keep our Chapter 12 institutions working in the way that we have conceived them in the Constitution? And Smarterz said something very important. He spoke of an external locus of control. I am very different from that. What I'm looking at is in fixing and looking at Zimbabwe from an internal perspective and fixing issues from an internal perspective and highlighting those key things that I think will bring about this development, this robustness that has so far been eluding us. Because once you elevate it into these political positions that people take, and this party is aligned to things that are coming from outside the external locus of control that will be resisted by this, because it actually gives them oxygen to resist that, because they think, or they then spin the narrative that we are under threat of being taken over by foreign interests. And this is the real crust of the matter in Zimbabwe that is impeding progress. We need to go back to those same things that we've enshrined in our constitution as our only protections. There's nothing else. What SADC will say, yes, it's important, but it is of no consequence as per the constitution, as per the real issues in our country. The same way, if we become SADC a team going to observe elections somewhere else, we can only suggest. So that's what I was bringing attention to. I am worried by what President Mnangagwa did, and that doesn't mean that I differ with him on all things, but on this aspect where he extended the term of the Chief Justice and made that same extension to benefit the incumbent. Remember, the framers of the Constitution were trying to make sure that if a change should be made, especially one that...
Can we deal with the topic?
Come on.
Come on. Why are you going back there?
So basically, as long as we continue to have this political, especially one especially of the CCC, which tries to belittle everybody else who doesn't think like them, it would be tragic. So I still feel that we need to center the issue of our Chapter 12 institutions and keep them from being manipulated, because obviously the posture of they're trying to get something out of this statement that they've made, or this move that they've made. there is a
And
whole
Mkomani, KK, just under 30 seconds. So
Thank you.
according to what EU has done in terms of withdrawing this money, do you understand the reasons that they've used for them to make that decision?
I saw their qualification, but I'm saying the reasons that are number one, right? They are basing their qualifications on preliminary reports. That is of concern to me because
no. The reason why they are withdrawing the money are the reason of transparency and independence. Are you understanding those and why they've come to that conclusion?
I am understanding that, but remember the EU, was it actually a condition of this that they will not only withdraw if that condition is met, they will also be the same people who are interested in funding us would also be the determinants of what they call transparency and what the other reason, all those things,
right? So your argument point is
it from somewhere.
Yeah, so your argument point is on the unknown, something that you're not quite sure of, whether it was a part of the terms and and conditions that they'd used as the basis for funding these cookies, or you need to meet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Otherwise, if you don't meet those, we are going to be withdrawing the funding. That is where you are.
Not only that. Because once they withdraw the funding, right? That's a statement. Are they trying to manipulate certain things? That's my concern. Are they trying to manipulate? Because there's a whole optics issue here. If this singular move of withdrawing and putting it out in the public the way that they've done, are they by that move trying to manipulate something? Are they trying to interfere with our processes? What is going on? That's where my concern is.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. I think let us put it to rest right there. Right. Citizen Z, take the mic.
Thank you, Uncle Ged. With me, I might need a little bit of help, maybe.
Go on. We'll try to help each other. We've got capable people here. Guys, if you need to help him out on anything, we are free to do so. Let us go, Zed.
Okay, we're picking a simple month. March. What was the exchange rate around March, guys? March of this year. Roughly.
I mean, I'm not sure.
1 is to what, roughly? Or April? Or May?
Yeah, we'll Google. Let me Google and find out.
The reason I'm doing that is
Zeti, sorry, I did not hear your question. Can you repeat it?
Exchange rate in Zimbabwe, official exchange rate in May or April or February, any month this year.
All right, the exchange rate.
Not
yeah,
June.
the exchange rate started to fly around May, June, and July. But July, they tried to manipulate it to make it as if something is gaining, but there's nothing. All right, I will bring the number.
Right. Zed, it's important for continuation of your presentation, or we can look for that whilst you're presenting. Hello?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I was talking while the mic was shut, but yes, when you get the number, just check it in. Then I will continue.
Right.
So ZEC has always been underfunded.
There's a number that I got here.
Yes, Con.
So in June,
yes,
it's saying over 6,000. I'm
over
seeing
6,000.
I'm seeing it from a flyer from Triple C, which is saying in 2019 the exchange rate was 1:16. In 2023, that was in June, it's over 6,000 against the USD.
Then do me a favor and do a 1.6 billion divided by 6,000. Then when you get the number, check it out. So ZEC has always been underfunded throughout the time, and in being underfunded, the money given to ZEC has never been 100%, ever. They've never received 100% of the money that the Minister of Finance wants to give, said to give them. ZEC this year, he had 3 things to do. No, 4. By-elections, this year and last year. By-elections, you remember how big they were. Delimitation, process-wise, remember how big it was. A voter education, and then elections. And now look at the money that ZEC was supposed to be given by Zimbabwe, by the government itself, to do those 4 things. It is impossible.
It's 266,000.
No. You have to multiply because remember, we are going up. So it is 9.6 trillion RTGS. Thank you.
No, we are dividing.
No. You say 1.6 billion divided by 6,000, right?
All right.
Yes, that's
if
correct.
If we are dividing, then it's
so we're looking at 266, 266,000.
So
or 267,000, yeah.
So we're expecting ZEC to do an election with 266,000.
This money is the money that was coming from from where, Zed?
From the budget.
All right, from the budget. Okay.
Yeah, ZEC's budget for 2023, including the elections. $228 to do an election across the country. 3 of them. Presidential, a National Assembly, Council. To do voter education. Yeah. To do printing. Yeah. To use BVR, paying of workers. Yeah. A movement, logistics, ink, paper, whatever you saw there, from 200. Guys, there are houses in Harare and Bulawayo worth more than that. Yeah, there are some houses that can turn around and compete in the high density suburbs for that amount of money. Yeah, and what a population of 6 million. ZEC has no money. The Zimbabwean government has no money. And in the context of ZEC, everyone has acknowledged that with this restraint that ZEC has and the Zimbabwean government has, it therefore affects democracy. Because ZEC has to cut corners. Case in point, delimitation. By the time delimitation started, ZEC had not received 80% of its money that it needed for delimitation. So when the delimitation ended, ZEC had not received 100% of its money. How much it had received, no one knows. But we all know that when it started, they were complaining even to Parliament that they had 1% that they were waiting for, and then they did not have. We again see them again in Parliament. After the delimitation, now when they're preparing for the thing, complaining that the money that we were promised is not there. And we are struggling here, and we've got elections to come in. So the outside world, seeing what Zimbabwe is, turns around and does all these programs, that Zimbabwe comes in as well for help. And it gets help. And it gets help, and because it's Zimbabwe that they're dealing with. They acknowledge We cannot send money to you guys directly anymore because we know what you do with the money. You might divert it, things. So we'll rather turn around and put it to the source. Yeah. If you want voter education, we'll turn around and use NGOs, then straight to the voter education, then job done. Yeah. Zimbabwe agrees to that because it understands itself. This is outside me and you. This is in the rooms when they're talking by themselves. There's no lying to each other here. Yeah. And then the program that we're talking, that has been pulled back. It is a program that is over 10 years old. It has put in almost 30 million. It has helped with the PVR thing that we have, PVR, the one that when we were given the money, we said we have bought everything. We are ready for 2018 elections. PVR and D is okay. Then it turns out, no, we did not use it. And some things were not ready because we did not turn around and do what? To use up the money nicely. All these people are watching this. Now we come to this stage where they turn around, as just pointed out, transparency. What we want to see how the programs are being done. Yeah, the election process. Yeah, we want to see whether they are following the laws. We understand that you have a problem with money, so we're going to give you the money to do these things. Only thing you have to do for us is to show us. Yeah, because we're helping. Now here is the sad bit with me that I'm very sad about. When they pull out, it's like they've done. It turns around and cries, and alarm bells ring. That now we have to say to ourselves, what will happen if they don't pull out and don't come back in 2028 with a ZEC that is so underfunded that the government of Zimbabwe thought to itself that it was okay for ZEC to turn around and have roughly 200,000 to run an election. Uncles, if a person one vote turns around and costs, the ballots and everything else, $1, that means in this election, ZEC could have only turned around and come out with 200,000, let's say 250,000 ballots. And then the question becomes, what about the rest of the 6 million people? What ballots would they be using? You see now the problem that we've got. We've got a government that is broke. We've got a country that is poor. We have to acknowledge all these things. Poor. And it is balanced, to be honest, by these guys that we turn around and say that we hate on ZPC. And then at night, we go and knock at the door and say, don't worry, what I was saying in ZPC is just politics. It's just political rhetoric, but please, can you help us because we need to do this thing because we cannot do anything. And to me, that is where my fear is. That now we are left with a government that has nothing. And we will know that it will go through an election even if it is nothing. I think we are going to get to a point, uncles, I'll finish up with this, whereby ballots in Zimbabwe will end up being printed back and forth, back, so that when you uncles turn around and teach your ballot, you pass it to Smarterz. Smarterz turns it over, they write his name and teach. Because at the end of the day, that is the line that we're going on. An electoral commission with $200,000 to run an election. Guys, we're joking with ourselves. That shows that, that the government of Zimbabwe is not serious. If not, that we are poor. We become the pinnacle of a third world country for real. And we have to take that trophy and wear it and go around out here and begging for money to sponsor these so-called democratic processes that actually turn around and cost a lot of money to do. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I think it was me because I was supposed to be Citizen KK and then me. I've got a solution, Citizen. Don't worry about it. We can do this like that Nike baby. You know that advert. You wake up in the morning, you stand in front of the mirror, and you say this to yourself. We can do this. Now, this is how we can do it. The next elections, we're going to run them over a month. All candidates will stand outside the polling station. If you support them, you stand behind them. And then we'll count. 1, 2, so that we don't buy ballot papers. Then the move will go to the next polling station. They stand there, everybody behind them. It's a very simple solution, and we don't actually need to write anything down. We can just use my abacus everywhere. Bring your sticks, and we do it that way. We do it that I'm being funny. No, ZEC probably did not run on 200 and something thousand for the elections. What the Zimbabwean government always knows is that it has received money from many sources. Right now, we are focusing on this EU funding. In fact, we don't know how many other funding bodies, how many other states have actually funded ZEC. We find things one at a time. What would be nice is for us to have had the complete list of what funded ZEC during this election. And we will find that our government makes a lot of mistakes. Citizen, you will remember the other time when the president stood in a podium and thanked America for a sum of money that we couldn't understand because Zimbabwe does not receive state-to-state funding. What we then found, it was the collective amount that had gone to the United, what was it called? United States aid organizations. So they actually, when they have their funds, they total them up and they actually tell the government how much money is actually in the system for different functions. When they come up and say we are going to get rid of NGOs, no, they will not get rid of NGOs. Those NGOs actually are costed into the government programs. They actually plan budget using what is available on the ground via the agencies. We know that as well because there was also another time when the president made another declaration about money that was on the ground and equated it and said, oh, the United States gave us money, my dollar for real, for real, for real. That money had not gone to him as well. It had gone, it was money he was counting. That was on the ground with United States agencies in Harare. They actually put out a report and the amount was exactly the same as he had declared. They are not stupid. The Chinese government at one point had to caution Mtuli for under-declaring in his budget the amount he had received from China. So our budget is always buttressed by aid. It's always been like that. So yes, Mtuli can be delaying and giving my 80%, my 16%, 12% to some other ministries because he understands what is already available for different ministries via the agencies that represent the work that must be done within those sectors. So Ana Castro, when they come and laugh at the amount that was on the table, they actually don't understand how their government has been functioning in Zimbabwe. Bootstrap. Over-inflating things. Over-exaggerating the productivity of Zimbabwe and its fiscus. Consistently doing that. He didn't return Mtuli to come here under-declared by over half the amount that the Chinese government had given. Almost made another man be killed in China. Kutitaka kupa mari, your man is not declaring the full amount. The embarrassment of having our budget analyzed by a foreign government who then have to caution us. Then we go to the issue, Yakuti. If it is always known that the West has got its intentions that run parallel, propagating its own agendas? Are you not worried that your government seems to be unaware and has not done any risk mitigating strategies to prevent this power of coercion by other governments? How do you then trust that government to ensure national security? How do you trust that government to actually safeguard its citizens from consequences that may arise from you not adhering to a foreign body that you allowed on your soil? What is the purpose of government of Zimbabwe? If it is not risk adverse, if it is not minimizing that risk that may, or preventing itself from getting its citizens under risk, because ultimately the ones who will suffer from the consequences of a mingling foreign body is the Zimbabwean citizen. As they play politically these games, who suffers? Whose democracy suffers? Ours. This money that has been pulled out, if it should not be available, and this is the surface of the money that is being withdrawn, what other budgets are going to be removed from the programs, functions that have been going to other NGOs, the ones that have been doing voter education, the ones that have been doing information what is it called? What will happen?
Dissemination.
Yes. What happens then? Yet we can boast that Zimbabwe is a mainly rural population. You've got one TV channel. You've got limited broadcasting from stations across Zimbabwe. We rely on a centralized broadcasting network. That it doesn't make sense that we don't see how this government consistently risks its citizens, because it can jump up at the end of this and start the blame game, the scapegoating, the displacing blame, and then creating narratives that seemingly make them nationalist. What is a nationalist? What is a patriot? Is it one that does not safeguard its citizen? Is it the one that risks its citizen consistently? So I think we should now question ZANU-PF when it speaks of it being nationalist. It cannot be. It has not shown us proof that it can. You cannot be nationalist and not be able to safeguard the institutions that are going to promote, safeguard, and deliver democracy by deliberately underfunding. Yet, to create a spectacle for the world, you declare that our fiscus, our GDP has gone up, the level of production. How then are we funding our organizations that are responsible for the safe running of our country? We have to question them.
Right. I hear you. Right. Thank you very much, for that, Mercy. I want to call upon Anotida, and we are going to be followed by Mr. Red, Mad Cow. Commander, you've dropped, but I'll bring you up. But let us go in, with that order. I'm going to circle back to you, Castle, and Champion as well. So, yeah, let us go, with that order. Anotida, are you there? Anotida? Going once? Going twice? And the speaker goes to Mr. Red. Mr. Red, are you there? Mr. Rat, are you there? Right, okay. Matt Cow, are you there?
Hi, Mkoma. Hi, Gerrard.
Hi. Yeah, I am good. I'm good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm speaking from Lusaka. Thank you again for joining you, and thank you for the topics. I'm always glad joining Africans speaking. Whatever affects Zimbabwe, whatever affects Botswana, whatever affects South Africa affects all of us. I think
we had a situation when there was xenophobia in South Africa, and I think one of our Zambian guys was killed, and the students from our highest learning institutions took to the roads and went to the South African embassy, wanted to break in the South African supermarkets. And that was the day that I realized that actually we are a South African extension, because all the supermarkets just closed. Why am I saying so? Even the elections that happened there, do you know that they have brought so much tension even in our country here as we are talking? So I just want to respond to a few things that I heard my previous speaker, our comrade sister, where she was saying of the funding of ZEC, of which I've read a story also that EU is sanctioning ZEC. They will never again fund the elections. I think for me, I think even the last time I had joined your discussion, your space, I clearly said we are happy being funded by these foreign aids. I don't know how many of us Africans fund their elections. And I don't know when we wake up and fund our own elections. I don't know how much we have that we fail even to do what is necessary for ourselves. I commend you, Mkoma, my sister, sorry, for that brilliant idea of abacus voting. I think that will help us as Africans, because we cannot go digital or electronic. We cannot. That will just manipulate everything. And I'll be glad that if this kind of voting might be introduced in all our African states. But again, they will say, no, you'll be campaigning during that time. I don't have much to say, but what I just want to urge every Zimbabwean, every African, we keep on fighting one another. We keep on insulting one another while they are lacking behind the closed doors in the dark, just getting our gold, getting our diamonds. While we are busy insulting, we are busy stealing from each other while they are busy making money. I think it's high time that Africans really united, looked at the interest of their people, their masses. We have a lot of paupers around us, but still there's nothing much being done. Zambia itself is presenting its, under this government, it will be presenting its third budget. And if you ask me, more than 50% of the budget is from aid, from debts. How do you plan your house like that? Huh? You have a house to run and you depend on your neighbors that they help you. When is Africa going to wake up? I think let me end there today. I'll be more of a listener than a speaker today. Thank you so much, everyone. Please, let's continue.
Right. Thank you very much, for that, Mkoma. I just want to bring in this announcement. It's being reported that Patricia Chibaya, a recently elected councillor from Chinhoyi, is tragically passed on. I'm seeing condolence messages being posted. I've seen Obey writing, I've learned with the deep sadness the death of my comrade, Patricia Chibaya, just a few weeks ago. She was sworn in as a councillor for Chinhoyi Ward 2, and today she has departed. This is a huge blow to our community, to our Chinhoyi community and the entire fraternity of change champions of Mpoara. Fadzima has written, very sad to learn of the tragic passing of Patricia, a recently elected councillor from Chinhoyi, always passionate, vocal on community issues, and a champion grassroots mobilizer. She'll be dearly missed. Sincere condolences to her family and loved ones. Right. So it is with deep regret that we notify of the untimely death of one of us, a chain champion, the People's Councillor, Patricia Chebaya of Ward 2, Chinoi, Mashonaland West. She was recently elected in the just ended elections. Gone too soon. That is a message that is coming from Motsammo. Yeah, so that is what I'm seeing. So yes, it's a sad moment for the Chibaya family in Chinoi, and I pass my condolences, and I'm quite sure you equally also pass, your condolences to Patricia Chibaya, who is sadly, passed on. Right. Let us continue with our conversation. It's a sad moment, really, when you get, to be talking about, these things. But let me find out if Anotida, are you back? Are you there? Or Mr. Rat, are you there? Before I bring in other speakers. Right. Okay. Since you're not there. Our time is now 2021, ladies and gentlemen. I want to bring Koba Ndaba Zezwe to the conversation. So we're going to be finishing at the top of the hour, which is 9 p.m. So it is 22 past the hour of 9. So if I can ask people, those who are eager to make their contributions, to request the mic now or forever hold your peace. Right. All right. So because we are going to be finishing at the top of the hour. Right. Ndaba, you have not spoken. Can you take the mic, please?
Thank you, Uncle George. Hello, everyone. Before I make my contributions, I wanted to make a correction to some guys here, KK and Castro. It's like Castro seems to be held back in colonial perspectives. Countries have moved on after the demise of colonialism in Africa. Each country is free to get into partnerships with whatsoever country it chooses under the globe. So to say EU has interest in Zimbabwe and the like, it's a non-starter, because if we start that conversation, kungangoedza tichitaura nezvazvo. Our fathers did not go to war to liberate our country for it to be mortgaged to China, Russia, Belarus, you name them. But we see them getting involved in the economic affairs of Zimbabwe, and no one talks about it. People are moved from their ancestral lands. No one talks about it. It's good when it's done by China. But here is EU, which has been funding our government, particularly ZEC. They are withdrawing. I heard KK saying they haven't built any infrastructure. I need to correct him there. A point of reference is a clinic in Country Park. It is not the only one that Mtuli Ngube used to campaign as if that was a ZANU-PF funded project. That was funded by USAID. That's the infrastructure. And if you look at the donor aid that comes to Zimbabwe, it's more than the aid coming from China and Russia combined, the aid that comes from the Western world. So let's come here to these spaces and debate on issues that we are knowledgeable of, than using ignorance as a point of reference. We saw this coming after this short election. EU was bound to withdraw its funding because the election did not go according to what was agreed. Like ZEC put it across, I won't repeat. ZEC messed up big time. And to me, I think they did that deliberately because they knew that ZANU-PF was going to win. Everyone knows that ZEC is an extension of ZANU-PF.
So in doing so, it has got ripple effects to our democracy. Of course, ZANU-PF is going to benefit in that it won't be in the radar, the international radar for scrutiny. Once EU pulls out, ZANU-PF is going to continue doing what they want because no one will hold them accountable. To me, that's why I'm saying I think it's deliberate. They just want to do their things on their own without being accountable to anyone. But sadly, it's not only EU that was not happy about the conduct of our elections. We remember the period leading to the elections. Joaquin Chissano flew to Zimbabwe. From Zimbabwe, they went to Egypt, discussing about the debt relief for Zimbabwe in Bank of Africa. And here we are, we have got the African Union having concerns about our elections, which they highlighted during Chisano's visit that Zimbabwe should stick to democratic practices, such as holding of free and fair elections. But ZEC did not do that. So if African Union leaves Zimbabwe on its own, are we going to say African Union is a sellout like what we do with the Western countries? I don't know if these guys here have got an answer. I would also want to thank the speaker who talked about our governments using foreign aid in their budgets. I once had this discussion with Bento. I think he's still here. I told him that governments use donor aid to supplement their budgets. He refused. But if he's here, I'm glad he will correct his misconception on that aspect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, for that. Thank you very much, for that presentation. Right. So, Mr. Rex and Ms. Anotida, you are still not here. Okay. Let me go to Nkoma Castro. I see, you are eager, to speak. Nkoma Castro, can you take, the mic, and then I'm going to ask Nkoma Champion, to come in.
Okay, thank you. In the case of Zimbabwe, for Malawi, Zambia, their government budget is directly sponsored with foreign aid. But in the case of Zimbabwe, our budget is not directly sponsored by any foreign government, maybe except in the case of China, Russia, the Look East policy. There's a reason why we went to Look East policy, because there was no more funding from the West after 2000. So the money that comes from the West goes through NGO to the likes of Hopewell, Banakwekweza, those are the ones who are benefiting from that funding. USAID, projects, and a little bit of token when they give food supplies, during droughts and natural disasters. But generally funding, that's why if all this aid that you were saying comes into Zimbabwe was actually coming in, would you see our hospitals functioning better? Would you be discussing about cancer machines? If this funding, the Western funding, was coming into the country to actually do good in the country, we would not be talking about dilapidated schools. So where is this money going to? It's just being spent by NGOs and activists, there, as we call them, cashivists. So in the case of Zimbabwe, going forward, I believe this is a non-partisan issue. It's an issue that we need to look at it to say, it's an issue that is affecting Western Africa. That's why people in Western Africa are uprising. It's because the colonialism is still continuing. Platinum in Zimbabwe is taken by 2% royalties. How do you fund a school with 2%? Right? When you go to the corporate tax, the accountants do their thing so that they don't pay enough corporate tax. We have a case whereby Zimplants was fighting Zimura for many years, refusing to pay corporate tax. So some of these things, it's about we need to look at the causes why we are failing to fund, to self-fund ourselves when it comes to our infrastructure, our elections. It's about continuation of colonialism under other ways, right? You look into South Africa, they have all these Western companies there. There's no sanctions there, but people are living in Mukuku, in shanks and shanty towns. Why is South African lives not improving, right? And someone says colonialism ended and this. Yes, we should partner with anyone who's progressive, but we cannot just not speak certain issues. Like someone says, I'll give you 5 million, then gives you 1 million and says this funding is to improve the processes of running an election and improves the processes of ZEC. Then withdraws funding. How do you improve a process? A process is improved continuously over a period of time. So how were they expecting ZEC to be perfect after giving it $1 million out of 5, right? And that just shows that there was no goodwill on their part. It's not like this will be the last election. If they were really progressive about improving the processes, electoral processes, they would have stretched this until next election so that by the time the next election comes, ZEC would have been streamlined, would have been more efficient. The problems that have been identified in this election would have been dealt with. That's why there's observers. Observers are there to find the weaknesses of the process and remedy solutions to say, you know what, next elections, please take care of these issues that arose. That's why they come as observers, not as monitors. They are there to observe and recommend. So it just shows that there was no goodwill on their part. And as long as we rely on foreign entities to be crucial in funding our crucial processes, such as electoral processes, then we are not going anywhere. We should do, if ZEC does not have enough money, ngapaitwe mafunding ipo pamaspaces anaye. Poonekwa entities that can actually direct fund mari yabviswa nemacitizen yoiswa into an escrow account, then panotanga electoral process wopiwa mari kana iri yefuel kana iri yekuhaya mapickup trucks kumeka sure kuti maballots asvike on time. Kana kuri kuti maelections acho onzi aite 2 days, first day kovhotwa kumaruzevha, second day kovhotwa kumatowns ose, we could recommend those progressive issues. And also kana munhu adyiwawo futi tinofanirwa kuva nemutemo iri serious kuti kana munhu wadyiwa ukasaproducer evidence to prove your case, haufanirwi kufamba uchitaura. There should be consequences kuti you will be banned from next election. So there's a lot of improvements on both the parties who participate, right? ZANU-PF itself, it goes its own areas, it must improve. Opposition must have its own areas, they improve. So at national level, same as citizens, we have to come to a point where we say we want everyone to be accountable. You cannot just say ZANU-PF must be accountable. Opposition must also be accountable to everyone in Zimbabwe to say, okay, we won. Here is our evidence. Take an NGO to do auditing of